This is MC of our story, Ghislain Peridium, the eldest son of a noble family that's basically broke beyond repair. The maids and everyone in the house are super scared of him, and honestly, with good reason. He's known as this cursed guy with a horrible, despicable personality and the worthless son of Count Peridium. With titles like that, you'd expect him to be just another pampered noble brat, but that's far from the truth, at least not anymore, and his opponent is starting to figure that out the hard way. This bearded guy facing Ghislain can't believe what's happening. He's getting thoroughly beaten by someone he thought was just useless scum. Meanwhile, Ghislain is calm and collected, cool as ever during the fight. Internally, he's actually satisfied because all the money he dumped into setting up this trap is finally showing results. With a smirk, Ghislain asks the bearded man if he's enjoying the unexpected twist. That only pisses the guy off more because it feels like Ghislain knew exactly how things were going to play out. And guess what? Ghislain proudly admits it. He didn't just anticipate the enemy's plan, he knew everything from the start. The number of soldiers, the identity of the spies, who provided reinforcements, he had it all figured out. The bearded man is stunned. He starts yelling, furious that his secret weapon has been exposed by someone he once dismissed as worthless. But Ghislain isn't in the mood for his whining. He shuts him up with a solid kick to the face, making it clear this guy can scream all he wants. But no matter how many fights break out, Ghislain is confident he'll come out on top every single time. So, how is he so sure of winning? Simple, because he knows everything. Let's rewind for a second. Almost a year ago, in the kingdom of Lithuania, near the Peridium estate, Ghislain Peridium woke up in pure shock. He was alive, but he shouldn't have been. The last thing he remembered was being in the middle of a hopeless battle, squaring off against one of the continent's elite 7 noble knights, a man named Idun, the one who was supposed to kill him. Now, Ghislain wasn't just some random nobody either. He used to be one of the top 7 mercenary kings on the continent, feared and respected everywhere under the name Ghislain Peridium. Before ending Ghislain's life, Idun mocked him, saying he never expected to see the trash of the fallen Peridium family again. From what Idun knew, Ghislain had vanished after his sister's death, and his name had become nothing but a fading memory. That threw Ghislain off. He asked how the hell Idun knew so much about his past. Idun told him he'd been tracking him for a long time because he was one of the people involved in the destruction of the Peridium family. He had worked alongside the Delphine household to bring them down. Hearing one of them made Ghislain freeze. That meant the Delphine household hadn't acted alone. There were others who played a role in his family's ruin. And now, one of those people was standing right in front of him. His hatred and thirst for revenge surged like never before, and then Idun cut his head clean off. But strangely, Ghislain later woke up whole, unharmed, and very much alive. Not only was his body intact, with no sign of injury, but he even looked noticeably younger. He looks around, clearly confused about what's going on. Just then, someone calls out to him, addressing him as young master and urging him to come out. The man is actually a soldier from the Peridium household, Ricardo. But before Ricardo can say much, he finds a sharp sword aimed at his neck as Ghislain demands answers immediately. Ricardo, clueless about the situation, agrees to answer whatever his master asks, though he can't understand why a sword is necessary for a conversation. Even Ghislain is caught off guard by Ricardo's reaction after all. This was supposed to be an enemy. Ricardo pulls himself free from Ghislain's grip and reminds him that he had collapsed from exhaustion earlier after throwing a tantrum. He'd been stressing out over how to lead a raid on the orcs. Naturally, this explanation makes zero sense to Ghislain. Then Ricardo tells him to grab his stuff and head out because everyone's waiting outside. Ghislain, still lost, asks where they're going. Ricardo informs him they're heading to the Peridium estate. Hearing his family name shocks Ghislain. As far as he knows, that estate was destroyed. But as they reach a hill overlooking it, he gets a clear view, and it's unmistakably the Peridium estate, fully intact. He had once seen it burn to the ground, and now, here it stands. Ricardo, a bit confused, mumbles under his breath, wondering why his master keeps referring to his own home as if it had fallen. If the Count hears that, there could be consequences. Trying to make sense of it, Ghislain pinches his cheek, hoping this is just a dream, but the pain is real. That's when it hits him. He's younger now, the estate is untouched, and everything seems to have gone back to how it was, which means he's traveled back in time. Back then, his younger self was resentful toward the family. That immaturity, rooted in feelings of inferiority, caused endless trouble. Eventually, people in the household started avoiding him, and unable to handle the criticism, he ran away. Years later, he became a mercenary, survived brutal battles, honed his skills, and earned a name for himself. He returned to Peridium hoping to make amends, but by then, the estate had already been reduced to ashes. He had lost everything, but now somehow, it's all back. Everyone he cared about is still alive. He's overwhelmed, realizing he's been given another chance, but there's no time to celebrate. From what Ricardo mentioned, they're on their way to raid the orcs, and Ghislain remembers this day all too well. It was the day nearly everyone in his squad died. In his past life, he had joined the orc raid squad to prove himself. The report back then had mentioned only 3 orcs, so Ghislain, with no command experience, thought it'd be easy peasy. But when they arrived, they were ambushed by over 20 orcs. Because of his recklessness and pride, most of the squad was wiped out. Right now, our MC feels pretty confident that the situation is manageable, mainly because those orcs don't seem to have any real tactics. But the real issue is whether his soldiers will actually trust him, considering they all think he's just some worthless loser. Unfortunately, he doesn't even get a moment to prepare, because out of nowhere, a watchtower gets completely wiped out as a massive horde of orcs comes charging in. Ghislain is absolutely stunned by the sudden attack. He hadn't expected these creatures to strike so soon. The orcs are tearing through the soldiers like it's nothing, and each one is powerful enough to wipe out multiple foot soldiers single-handedly. Raid Squad Commander Skovan jumps into the fray and shouts for everyone to form a defensive line. But honestly, it looks like no formation or tactic is going to stop these savage beasts, who are slaughtering people non-stop. Even Skovan is convinced they're doomed. Getting ambushed like this with zero preparation is just brutal. And to make things worse, there are way more of these monsters than anyone expected. With the way things are spiraling, Skovan is sure they're all going to die. Then suddenly, someone shouts at the commander. When Skovan turns around, he sees a massive beast about to crush him with its axe. He barely has time to react. That's when Ghislain lunges in, yanks Skovan out of harm's way, and slices straight through the monster's hand like it's just a cucumber. Everyone is left speechless. How the hell did Ghislain pull that off so effortlessly when he's supposed to be the useless one? The beast collapses, while Ghislain mutters in irritation about still not being able to use mana. He walks up to the commander, offers his hand, and demands command over the troops. But Skovan refuses flatly. He doesn't believe a so-called worthless brat should be leading during such a dire moment. He even asks Ghislain if he thinks this is some kind of game. Even if Ghislain is the young master, Skovan says he can't just hand over authority given by the Lord so easily. But Ghislain had already guessed that no one would believe in him, and now he's getting pissed. Just then, another monster charges at them, and Skovan steps in thinking Ghislain is too inexperienced to handle this. But Ghislain decides it's time to shut these idiots up and show them what he can really do. He throws his sword at the beast with insane speed. The commander immediately starts yelling at him for disobeying orders, but shuts right up when he sees the orc drop dead from a single hit. It's clear the sword struck with terrifying precision. The commander stands there looking like he's suffering from a serious case of constipation. Meanwhile, Ghislain stares at him and asks if he even knows the most crucial thing in battle. Of course, the commander doesn't, because clearly he's the real useless one here. Ghislain shifts his focus toward the frightened soldiers and reminds Skovan that there's no way to win a battle when fear has already taken over the troops. The first step should be gaining momentum. With that, our guy dashes forward once more, yanks his sword from the monster's skull, and launches himself into the air. He lands squarely on another orc and drives his blade straight into its head. Skovan can hardly believe what he's seeing. Meanwhile, our boy boldly challenges the monsters, taunting them to come at him if they want to die. Predictably, these brainless beasts charge at him, and he slices through them with the precision and speed of a ninja on an energy rush, tearing apart every single one that dares cross his path. His movements, reflexes, everything is happening at such incredible speed that Skovan is left frozen, staring in total disbelief. Even as a mana user, he can't keep up, so he can't begin to fathom how his skinny young master is pulling the shit off. Skovan notices that despite the obvious signs of fatigue, our guy is still evading attacks with the bare minimum of motion, and his sword strikes land perfectly on the enemy's weak points, like a master swordsman who can't even use mana, or maybe even someone beyond that level. But our MC isn't done. He keeps provoking the monsters, mocking them for being nothing like the fearsome warrior race they're rumored to be. The other soldiers are just as stunned, watching as every single orc charges toward the young master. They turn to their commander, waiting for orders, but the coward doesn't even come close to showing the kind of guts our boy has. He's still trying to process the fact that the young master deliberately charged into a swarm of orcs just to draw their attention. He doesn't get why. He's now running straight toward the edge of a cliff, but it soon clicks. Ghislain plans to lure the orcs off the cliff. Acting fast, Skovan orders his troops to raise their shield wall and prepare to back him up. Meanwhile, the orcs are right behind our guy, chasing him down. MC trusts that Skovan, being the capable commander he is, will catch on to the plan. As much as he'd love to hack every one of these orcs to pieces himself, he just doesn't have the stamina. But this plan isn't bad either. At the cliff's edge, the orcs realize too late that soldiers are waiting behind them in defensive formation. Without hesitation, our guy leaps off the cliff, signaling Skovan to follow through. The soldiers charge in and slam into the monsters, shoving them off the cliff to their brutal deaths below. The risky move works, and every last orc is eliminated. Though drained, the soldiers pull through. Skovan is still frozen in shock when he spots our MC clinging to the cliffside, his sword jammed into the rock to hold himself up. Even in this situation, there's no fear on his face, only a confident smirk aimed directly at Skovan. For a second, the big, mustached commander is thrown off, but then a proud smile spreads across his face. He quickly reaches out a hand, but it falls just short. The grip on the sword loosens, and just like that, the boy starts to fall, leaving everyone stunned by the sudden twist. Meanwhile, Ghislain begins slipping into unconsciousness, drifting into a dreamlike state where he hears his sister's voice and sees scattered fragments of memories involving her. He doesn't quite understand what's happening until suddenly, she grabs his hand, and just like that, he's pulled out of the dream. He jolts awake in bed, confused and shocked that he's even alive. As he tries to sit up, a wave of pain rushes through his entire body, making even the smallest movements agonizing. Every inch of him aches, a harsh reminder of how far he pushed himself, but in a strange way, it reassures him that he survived. At that moment, a maid enters the room with a relieved smile. It takes him just a second to realize it's Belinda. She's clearly both happy and upset, scolding him for all the stress he caused. But Ghislain doesn't hesitate. He throws his arms around her, hugging her tightly. She's totally confused by the sudden affection, unaware that to him, seeing her again after so long is overwhelming. You see, Belinda had been his personal maid since childhood. Through all the chaos he caused, she was the one who stuck by his side. But after his family's downfall, she vanished, and he never thought they'd meet again. Now, with her in front of him, he feels like he has to be honest, so he drops a bombshell. He tells her a catastrophe is heading straight for Peridium, and admits that he actually died and came back to life. Naturally, Belinda brushes it off. She agrees the orcs nearly killed him, but she refuses to believe his bizarre tale. He tries to explain further, but she just scolds him for being reckless. Realizing she won't believe him no matter what, he gives up. Belinda then shifts the topic, reminding him of the upcoming festival, something he would have missed if he had stayed injured. That catches Ghislain off guard. Seeing his blank expression, she reminds him that Lady Elena has been looking forward to going with him. It's the perfect opportunity for the siblings to reconnect. Suddenly, Ghislain remembers this festival. In his past life, he never got to enjoy it. It was around this time that something traumatic had happened, so when he asks how much time is left, she tells him it's next week. He has a week to prepare. But this isn't just about a festival. In his previous life, this exact day marked a tragedy that haunted him forever. On the day of the festival, his sister Elena was supposed to die. Right on cue, Elena walks into the room. Ghislain instantly pulls her into a hug, catching her completely off guard. Blushing, she accuses him of playing some weird prank. She doesn't realize how real his feelings are. He's simply overwhelmed to see her alive. But since he won't let go, Elena ends up forcefully pulling herself away, leaving his weakened body swaying under the pressure. Turns out, she's got some serious strength. From her reaction, it's clear the two siblings don't exactly have a warm relationship. Elena bluntly says she's only here because Belinda asked her to come. Apparently, there's some past grudge. Elena still remembers the time he insulted her. Ghislain, clueless at first, eventually realizes that yeah, he wasn't exactly a great brother in his past life. Honestly, he was kind of an asshole. So, he does something shocking. He apologizes. Both Belinda and Elena are stunned. Ghislain admitting fault? That's unheard of. They joke that maybe he got hit in the head too hard by the orcs and knocked something loose. But Ghislain quickly shuts that down, saying he really did get them. Right then, another wave of pain hits, and he doubles over. Elena doesn't miss the chance to poke fun, clearly enjoying the moment. It's obvious who came out worse in that fight. But Ghislain doesn't mind. Even with her sarcastic comments, he's just glad to see them being exactly the way he remembers. There's something comforting about it. And in that moment, he can't help but think, why did the old him waste so much time on things that didn't matter? During the upcoming festival preparations, Ghislain had turned down Elena's offer to attend together, using the raid squad incident as an excuse. That ended up being the last time he ever saw her. Not long after, Elena and her bodyguards were found brutally torn apart. Ghislain still regrets not being there for her when it mattered most. Suddenly, a knock interrupts the moment. Two knights appear at the door, Elena's bodyguards. The one with dark brown hair is Jamal, and standing behind him is Philip. Elena questions their presence since they were told to wait outside. One of them apologizes and explains that the servants have requested her to supervise the festival preparations. This catches Ghislain off guard. He doesn't understand why Elena needs to be involved in that. Belinda looks disappointed at his reaction and reminds him of the worker shortage in Peridium. Even someone like Elena has to pitch in. It's only now that Ghislain realizes this, since he never really paid attention to such things before. But now that he's here, he offers to help. His little sister is visibly shocked, and both girls start to wonder if he might have actually been knocked in the head or something. Soon, they reach the festival site, where everyone's busy setting up their stalls. But when they hear that Ghislain wants to help, a strange unease creeps in. His sister keeps trying to push him away, saying the best way he can help is by not getting in the way or causing trouble. But Ghislain refuses to leave her alone after all. Elena's body was discovered near the slums, far from the festival location. Someone must have either lured her out or dragged her there. He wants to make sure nothing like that happens again, and for that, he needs to fully understand the castle's layout. Just then, a knight runs in, calling for Ghislain. It's old man Fergus, out of breath, but clearly emotional. He starts crying, admitting how scared he was after hearing about the orc attack. Ghislain's sister jumps in too, pointing out how oddly he's been acting lately. She thinks it might be best if Fergus just takes him back. Seeing no other choice, Ghislain agrees, but requests to be taken to the abandoned training field in the castle instead. Fergus, puzzled, asks why. Ghislain simply says he wants to train. Though unsure what the young master is planning, the old man doesn't press him further and leads him to the training hall. As Ghislain steps inside, the first thing that strikes him is how well kept the training hall is. Far better than he ever imagined. It's the perfect spot for him to train, and the equipment? Way more advanced than anything he ever came across during his mercenary days. The old man explains that they've kept the place in shape just in case Ghislain ever wanted to return. He'd always believed Ghislain would eventually overcome whatever inner battle he was fighting. That genuine concern makes Ghislain pause. He never realized how much the old man had been trying to support him. It hits him hard. He feels a wave of guilt for not noticing it sooner. Quietly, he pats the old man's shoulder and says something half joking, half serious. Dying sucks, so he might as well try living a while longer. The old man, as usual, is baffled hearing him talk like he's already crossed over to the afterlife. But Ghislain just shrugs and admits it. Yeah, he did die and came back. Not that the old man buys any of it. Without dwelling further, Ghislain turns his focus back to training. He dismisses the old man, telling him he can leave now. Watching Fergus show him so much respect makes Ghislain reflect on how he's always treated those around him like enemies. But now, looking back, he realizes he was just being narrow-minded. Still, he can't get distracted. There's serious work ahead. In his past life, he heard that Elena's death was orchestrated by a lord from a neighboring territory. That one act dragged Peridium into a war that ultimately led to its destruction. Her death was the first domino in the fall of his house, and now, he's determined to fix everything, starting right here. First priority, rebuild his body. Time's short, but if nothing else, he needs to gain control of his mana. In this world, mana is a mystical force that allows humans to surpass their limits. Most people struggle to even sense or absorb it. But for Ghislain, even in the middle of chaotic battles, that part came naturally. He starts bundling the mana particles from the air, weaving them together like spinning thread. With countless battles under his belt, maybe even tens of thousands, forming a mana core is second nature to him. But if it were really that easy, he wouldn't be one of the top 7 strongest individuals in the land. Drawing from a half-burned magic book and tapping into the natural mana core all humans possess, Ghislain manages to forge not just a second, but a third core. He links them into a complex mesh of interconnected cores, forming a massive burst of energy. The effort takes a toll. Blood trickles from his nose and mouth, and sweat pours down his face. He's definitely hit his current limit. Back in his previous life, he had reached 5 cores. The entire technique is about generating an overwhelming force in a short time, but it guzzles mana at an insane rate. That's actually why he lost to Eden before. The guy showed up with a whole night order while Ghislain was already running on empty. In a fair one-on-one, he would have crushed him. The technique might be unstable, but it's enough for now. This time, he's got a younger body, and all the time he needs to master it. And this time, Eden's head, it's his for the taking. As for the traitors backing House Delphine, the ones who helped ruin their homeland, they're going down too. A week quickly goes by, and the long-awaited day of the festival finally arrives. Ghislain is all geared up, walking through town with steady, unshakable confidence. But as he moves along, he unexpectedly spots his sister, who looks surprised to see him. She's stunned not just because he showed up to the festival, which he's never liked, but also because he's been acting strangely lately. All she's been hearing is how he's done nothing but train non-stop for the past week. Trying to play it cool, Ghislain brushes off her concern, casually reminding her that, as the heir to a knightly family, training is simply a normal part of his life. But she doesn't let it slide so easily. She hits him with a harsh reminder that he's always despised the idea of becoming lord. That very attitude, she points out, was one of the main reasons he never got along with their father. Even though her words sting a bit, she walks away with a smile, clearly happy to see him finally stepping into the role he was meant to fill. Her comment lingers in Ghislain's mind, making him realize that his actions have already started shifting how people see him, and possibly even changing the course of his future. While the major events may still play out the same, the small things are becoming harder to predict. And now, using his knowledge of what's to come wisely has become his responsibility. He'll need to handle every situation with care. With that in mind, he's fully prepared to confront the ones who will kill his sister. For now, he sticks by Elena's side, staying alert. But after some time, she starts getting bored and complains that this year's festival feels just as dull as all the others. Meanwhile, Ghislain is lost in thought. The festival's almost over, and still, nothing major has happened. This makes him wonder, could the future have changed simply because he stayed close to Elena? Just as that thought hits, her bodyguards appear. They suggest taking Elena to a livelier part of the festival so she can enjoy herself a bit more. As they start to escort her away, Ghislain quickly puts the pieces together. These two, Jamal and Philip, are the trusted knights who've protected Elena since childhood. In his previous life, they were said to have been killed while defending her, but now, doubts start creeping in. Ghislain becomes convinced it's a trap. These guys must be the traitors within the family. He follows them quietly. The spot they arrive at is completely deserted, which immediately annoys Elena. She starts complaining about how pointless this all is. As she vents, Ghislain's suspicions only grow. At first glance, it's just an empty street, but the way debris and objects block every exit, that clearly shows this was prepared ahead of time. Just then, he's pulled out of his thoughts when Elena suddenly grabs his arm and starts dragging him along. Surprised by her strength, Ghislain jokingly asks if she's been hitting the gym, because for a young lady, she's seriously strong. But before she can reply, Jamal steps in to stop her, and the expression on his face says it all. His intentions are far from good. Elena starts trembling, panic creeping in as she wonders why everyone is acting so strangely. Jamal quickly apologizes for scaring her, but then his expression twists into something even more disturbing. He calmly says he just wants her to wait a little longer, claiming it's a small favor. Elena, now terrified and feeling utterly helpless, is interrupted by the arrival of someone new. A man wearing glasses steps into the scene, trailed by two of his goons. His name is Frank, and he looks quite satisfied with how well Jamal has handled things so far. Frank then turns to Jamal, confused about why Ghislaine is even here. He doesn't recall ever asking for this extra baggage. Jamal tries to reassure him, saying he'll handle the kid himself, and Frank won't even have to pay. Ghislaine, it turns out, had blindly followed his sister, completely unaware that he was walking right into a death trap. Finally, Ghislaine speaks. The first thing he demands is how this traitorous bastard plans to get away with betraying the Peridium family, but the man just laughs, barely fazed. He arrogantly claims all he has to do is run far away. He's done with this broken, poverty-ridden land that's already been ravaged by barbarians. And he's not alone. Plenty of others want to leave Peridium too. But before he can finish that sentence, the main character strikes. No words, just blood spilling from his mouth as he drops, sliced clean in two. Everyone's stunned. Jamal hits the ground, lifeless, and Ghislaine glares at the corpse, furious. He reminds the traitor that even if people chose to leave this land, they never sold out their own. His anger blazes as he locks eyes with the second traitor, who panics and yanks Elena closer, hoping she'll shield him from the same fate. He's dead wrong. A sword drives straight through his skull. He quivers, gasping for air as death takes him too. Now, Frank's goons start having second thoughts, wondering if they even want to get involved. What throws them off even more is that this guy, supposedly the eldest son of Peridium, isn't supposed to have any real combat experience. No training, no skills at least. That's what they believed. But Frank confirms it. This is the eldest son. Still, he can't comprehend how this guy just wiped out two men like it was nothing. And even more shocking, his attacks were laced with mana. Meanwhile, the girl clung to her brother, shaking with fear. But without hesitation, he knocked her out with a quick strike to the neck, telling her to get some rest. Frank, that smug bastard, thanked our guy for taking care of the two knights, pretending they had planned to handle them themselves. He even praised Ghislaine's godlike skills, and couldn't help but ask where he learned them. But Ghislaine wasn't having any of it. He shut them down cold, making it clear it was none of their business. He quickly sized them up. 3 of them altogether, but only the one in the middle seemed to be giving off any real mana. Still, no matter who they were, Ghislaine was ready to end this fast. Before making his move, he demanded to know who hired them to stage the ambush. Frank, with that annoying smirk, brushed it off, acting like someone about to die didn't deserve to ask questions. Of course, Ghislaine knew they wouldn't give up the information so easily, but he had his own methods of making people talk. One of the goons suggested just cutting his head off, but their boss shut him down, saying he wanted him alive. He planned to break every bone in Ghislaine's body until he was nothing more than a cripple, writhing in pain, making sure his suffering was long and agonizing. With that, 2 of the lackeys charged. But Ghislaine was prepared. He suddenly pulled out a firecracker and tossed it at them. That completely threw one of the thugs off. He froze for just a second, confused as to why anyone would use something like a firecracker. But that tiny moment of hesitation was all Ghislaine needed. In a blink, he closed the gap and killed one of them on the spot. The second one lunged at him next, but Ghislaine didn't flinch. He effortlessly blocked the attack, disarmed him, and yanked the sword from his grip. Without wasting a second, he followed through and cut the guy down like it was nothing. As the second lackey hit the ground, their leader tried to pull a cheap move, sneaking up behind Ghislaine to land a surprise blow. But our guy's reflexes were razor sharp. He blocked the ambush like it was nothing. Frank was stunned, realizing his sneak attack had completely failed, and Ghislaine wasn't about to let that slide. He retaliated in an instant, his sword moving so fast that Frank could barely react. The blade slashed deep across his throat, and the pipe he'd been smoking dropped to the ground. Frank, now desperate, launched another attack, but Ghislaine easily blocked it again. Even Frank had to admit without using mana to shield his neck, he would have been done for, and even Ghislaine had to give him some credit. He'd focused all his mana around his neck to reduce the damage. Pretty impressive, honestly. That's when Frank finally decided to get serious. Clutching his sword tightly, he hurled himself at Ghislaine, but just as he did, he caught a glimpse of Ghislaine's grin like he'd been waiting for this moment. That split second of confusion was all it took. Ghislaine completely overpowered him and slammed a brutal kick straight to his face. Frank manages to land on his feet instead of crashing down and smirks, confidently claiming that with his mana levels, a move like that won't affect him. But his confidence crumbles instantly when he starts violently coughing up blood. His expression twists in complete confusion. He has no clue what just hit him. Even though his body was reinforced with dense mana, he can't believe Ghislaine still managed to break through it with nothing but raw skill. Meanwhile, Ghislaine's thoughts drift to the mystery surrounding his sister's death. He never knew who was responsible until now, and now that he does, He's ready to make this bastard pay. He warns Frank to brace himself, because things are about to get real. Then, Ghislain activates his third core. Frank stands there, stunned, but he doesn't get the luxury of time to react. Ghislain's already charging him. They clash at such insane speed that only the glowing trails of their blades are visible. Frank fights back with everything he's got, but it's clear he's falling behind. His hands are going numb, and no matter how much mana he channels, it's not enough. His sword starts to crack from the sheer pressure. He's never even heard of a technique that boosts mana to this insane level, especially with such control. It's like Ghislain has transformed into an entirely new person, and that new person lands a brutal strike, slashing Frank hard across the body. But Ghislain isn't finished. He drives his sword deep into the man who killed his sister. Still, he doesn't let him die just yet. There are answers he wants, burning questions he needs resolved. Gritting his teeth, Ghislain demands to know who ordered the hit on Elena. But Frank isn't about to give up information so easily. He quickly whips out hidden ninja daggers, trying to go after Elena again. Before he can even move, threads block his arm mid-motion. Ghislain is the one controlling them. He decides to give Frank one more chance, answer everything truthfully, and he'll sheath his sword. Frank, now absolutely stunned, realizes the threads are made of mana crafted and controlled by Ghislain himself. Ghislain knows someone at Frank's level should be able to patch himself up, not that it'll matter if he destroys his mana core. Without hesitation, he starts channeling magic into the sword already lodged in Frank's gut. The bastard screams as his mana core begins to break apart. It's a dangerous move. One mistake, and the mana backlash could explode the entire area. It genuinely looks like Ghislain is risking a full self-destruct, but he's no rookie. He can handle it. Even Frank can tell Ghislain isn't bluffing. When he looks into Ghislain's eyes, all he sees is a blood-soaked reaper. Realizing he has no way out, Frank finally gives up the name Count Desmond, the real mastermind behind Elena's assassination. He further admits this entire incident was part of a bigger scheme, a setup meant to ignite a war between the Peridium and Degard families. Ghislain doesn't think highly of the name Desmond in his past life. Dirty work like this was handled by families loyal to the dukes. If his instincts are right, Duke Delphine is likely the one pulling the strings. Still, the facts remain. Frank came here to kill his sister, so Ghislain makes sure to finish him off and take revenge for the past. Frank, in his final moments, thinks Ghislain is going back on his word, but Ghislain coldly reminds him of all the sins he's committed. He has no right to be afraid, now that karma's finally caught up. But then, something unexpected. Frank starts laughing, even as he bleeds out. He claims nothing will change, even if Ghislain kills him. The damage is done. He's already completed his mission with the Degard family. No matter what Ghislain does now, Peridium is doomed. War is inevitable. Ghislain swiftly covers the bastard's filthy mouth to shut him up and quietly tells him the truth. He's already died once and come back, so there's no way he's letting history repeat itself. Those were the last words Frank heard before Ghislain activated the mana core shattering process. The mana inside surged backward, and Ghislain redirected it into the sky, triggering a massive explosion like some warped firework. Exhausted, Ghislain could barely breathe, but at least everyone who needed to be dealt with had been taken care of. Then he noticed his unconscious sister lying there, seemingly safe and peacefully asleep. Just as he let his muscles relax and closed his eyes for a moment, blood suddenly spilled from his mouth, and he doubled over in pain. He thought to himself, back when he was the mercenary king, destroying 3 cores would have been easy. But now, with this fragile body, it's clearly limiting him. Even so, he wasn't ready to give up. He quickly made his way to a nearby house and discovered a corpse. In his previous life, authorities had found a second body at this same location, along with Elena's, and from what Frank had mentioned earlier, that body was supposedly Degard's son. There was also the escort knight who died during the event. These bodies were the reason why the Peridium family in his past life had assumed the Degard family was behind Elena's assassination. The moment those corpses were discovered, war had broken out. This time, Ghislain made sure there would be no such evidence. He set the entire house ablaze. After that, he picked up his sister and began walking away. That's when we see some creep in a cap lurking in the shadows, secretly watching him. Later, that same guy shows up at a shady council basically. All the people running the show behind the scenes and reports that the mission failed. Naturally, the bigwigs weren't happy to hear it. One of them, cloaked in a hood, blames everything on Ghislain Peridium. The moment that name comes up, the room tenses. How could some nobody from the north pull off something this huge? Another council member scoffs, saying, Ghislain's always been a worthless piece of trash, so blaming the failure on him sounds ridiculous. But the hooded guy insists Ghislain was nothing like the man they had intel on. The way he executed everything was far too skilled, almost like he'd become an entirely new person. He tries to calm them down by saying he's already handled things with the Degard family, so sparking a territorial war won't be a problem. He pleads for one more shot to prove himself, but one of the higher-ups explodes in anger. The chaos from this failure has already caused serious problems, and now the entire council is in disarray. They all agree that the only solution is to kill Ghislain. Then the top dog among them finally speaks, cutting through the noise. He asks the hooded man how he plans to handle Ghislain. The reply, he's going to set up a duel, make it look natural. And the opponent, someone powerful. When asked who this person is, the hooded guy says it's Cain Logus, a powerhouse swordsman known for his brute strength. Despite being young, Cain is unmatched in physical combat. And here's the kicker, he's Ghislain's cousin. That connection would make their encounter feel perfectly natural, not staged. The room falls silent as they mull over the idea, but the top guy doesn't let him off the hook so easily. He warns that if this mission fails too, there won't be another chance. Shaken, the hooded man quickly swears he'll deliver results this time. The scene shifts to the Peridium Castle's training hall, where Fergus arrives to inform our boy that it's time for a meal. But just then, he spots a rope-like thread of mana flying toward him. It grabs the sword hanging beside him and quickly retracts, pulling the sword along. Ghislain, having practiced for a while now, is pleased to see he's making progress. That's when he notices Fergus, who immediately bows his head in apology for interrupting the session. But Fergus can't help his curiosity and asks how Ghislain managed that move. Ghislain casually explains that it's something called mana threads, using mana like string. In his previous life, it was second nature to him, but now, his current skill level is too low, and he lacks the mana needed to use it like before. To do so fully, he'd have to implode his core. However, by creating just one thread, he can minimize the mana cost and still use it effectively despite his limited resources. Fergus admits that despite training his mana for a long time, he's never seen anything like this. Now that he thinks about it, not long ago, Ghislain wasn't even using mana at all, let alone training with it. He's baffled by how Ghislain came up with the idea. Shaking himself out of it, Fergus returns to the reason he came. He respectfully nods and thanks Ghislain for protecting the young lady. But Ghislain brushes it off. There's no need for thanks. She's his sister, and he would have done it no matter what. A few days pass and the festival is put on hold. Understandable, given that a guardian knight just tried to traffic a noble lady. Meanwhile, Elena is fuming. No one believes her when she says Ghislain was the one who saved her. She asks her brother why he won't step in and convince them, but Ghislain just shrugs. He doesn't care, and even if he tried, no one would believe him anyway. Belinda, on the other hand, is furious just thinking about how the real culprits were Jamal and Phil, the ones who attempted to abduct Elena. Regardless, Ghislain is just relieved that his sister is safe, and that he managed to prevent a war. But deep down, he knows those bastards won't stop so easily, and he can't hold them off forever on his own. He needs to start building his own military force. Just then, a maid enters with food, but instead of something nice, Ghislain gets a dry piece of bread. Surprised, he asks Belinda about it. She explains that it's part of the fallout from the recent chaos. Right then, a loud voice echoes through the halls, some fat merchant yelling for compensation because of the cancelled festival. And it's not just him, there's a whole mob of merchants gathered outside, demanding they be reimbursed for their losses. Looking out the window, Ghislain asks who they are, and Belinda reminds him this country's economy relies heavily on merchants and the profits from the festival. Last year was a huge success, but this year it got cancelled after just one day. No wonder they're pissed. Only now does Ghislain realize just how bad the financial situation is. If he doesn't do something soon, things could spiral out of control. He tells Fergus to send out soldiers to calm the crowd, but Fergus calmly informs him that there are no soldiers available. Most of them have been dispatched to the Forest of Monsters to help with reconstruction after the orc raid. That makes things even worse. Peridium is in a constant state of war. Barbarians to the north and monsters to the south. No money means no soldiers, which just piles onto his growing list of problems. Taking Belinda aside, he whispers that since she's in charge of his finances, they need to find a way to settle the merchants down. But Belinda tells him straight there's no money left. When he asks why, she reminds him that the Lord cut off his funds because he kept spending recklessly. The idea of being broke makes Ghislain sick. He demands she lend him some cash, but she doesn't have any either. Everything seems stacked against him. No money, no soldiers, and no way out. Even with all his future knowledge, he's helpless without money to back it up. Just as he's lost in thought, Ricardo bursts into the room at full speed, panting hard. Alarmed, Ghislain immediately asks what's going on. Ricardo, practically shouting, says there's a problem. Young Master Cain is demanding to see him. The mere mention of Cain catches Ghislain completely off guard. That's when we witness one of our guys, Knights Commander Scovin, getting absolutely wrecked by Cain. Cain's insanely built body and brute strength are pounding the poor knight's face like it's a ripe tomato. Every punch feels like a sledgehammer, and clearly, Cain isn't holding back at all. The final blow knocks Scovin out cold. Ghislain arrives just in time to find his knight lying beaten and bloodied on the ground. The look on Ghislain Land's face says it all. He's furious. He turns to face his cousin, eyes blazing with rage. The bastard standing in front of him is massive, so big that Ghislain looks like a scrawny kid in comparison, and that wicked grin on Cain's face only makes things more intimidating. Beside Cain stands his escort knight. You see, Cain Logus, heir to the Logus County, is the very one with whom House Peridium once had an alliance. He used to be Ghislain's Gizlin's only friend, and his biggest rival. After knocking out the commander, Kane casually approaches Gizlin, but Gizlin doesn't flinch. Calm and composed, he asks Ricardo to explain what exactly happened. Ricardo recounts that they were responding to a report of trouble at a tavern. That's where they encountered Kane and his escort knight. During the confrontation, Kane asked Commander Scovan if the rumors about Gizlin were true. When Scovan explained the details, Kane suddenly grabbed him by the mouth, accusing him of muttering lies under his breath and refusing to tolerate anyone lying to the heir of Loges. At that point, Ricardo finishes his version of events, but then Kane's escort knight steps in, saying Ricardo left out a key part. He adds that Scovan had claimed Gizlin, someone who never even trained properly, had taken down an orc barehanded and defeated the traitorous escort knights all by himself. That's what pissed Kane off. He thought Scovan was spreading nonsense and gave him a beating as a reality check. Kane then smugly says none of this would have happened if Scovan hadn't lied. Gizlin doesn't respond out loud, but inside, we hear his thoughts, and they're full of bitterness toward Kane. Once his subordinate, Kane always stirred up chaos whenever he visited Peridium, and no matter the mess he made, no one dared call him out because he was allied with House Peridium. People always respected Kane, but Gizlin, he was constantly judged and looked down upon. While Kane was praised for his bold, confident nature traits expected from a rightful heir, Gizlin was criticized for not measuring up. Now, from Kane's perspective, even he's surprised at how calm Gizlin is being. Normally, Gizlin would have snapped and come at him by now. We then get a flashback to a recent moment in Loges County. Kane had received an order to kill Gizlin. The one giving the order was a hooded man, someone who'd previously failed a mission and taken heat for it from his superiors. This same hooded figure told Kane that if he succeeded, the esteemed one would back the Loges family. Kane confidently assured him that defeating Gizlin would be easy after all. Gizlin was nothing but a weak brat, but there was one thing that gave him pause. Gizlin was still an heir, so killing him could lead to political complications. The hooded man suggested a solution: provoke Gizlin into a duel, make it look like a simple squabble between noble heirs, then stage the whole thing as an unfortunate accident. To make sure things went smoothly, the hooded man offered to disguise himself as one of the escort knights to help orchestrate everything. That way, nothing could go wrong. The idea of getting to murder his own cousin thrilled Kane, and the bastard didn't hesitate to agree. In the present, Kane is trying to figure out why there's an order to eliminate Gizlin. He wonders if maybe Gizlin has changed recently, which could be the reason. Still, Kane sticks to the plan. To provoke Gizlin, he calls out and asks why he's just standing there they're facing off, so he better get things ready. Gizlin, confused, doesn't know what arrangements Kane is referring to. Kane brings up how the festival's been disrupted and suggests they should spice things up and have some fun. He also reminds Gizlin how they've always been on the same page for these kinds of things. But Gizlin barely reacts and vaguely asks if Kane is talking about alcohol. See, this bastard used to make Gizlin prepare booze and women every time he showed up. Back then, Gizlin went along with it just to avoid a beating, but not anymore. Because of Kane, he burned through a ton of money, which is also why his father ended up cutting his allowance. Now, Gizlin has clearly figured out the root of his financial troubles, and he's certain Kane is the problem, and possibly the solution too. Meanwhile, Kane keeps pressing, demanding that Gizlin bring him the goods immediately. Gizlin, playing along, agrees but says that first, Kane needs to repay the money he owes. The hooded bastard can sense something has changed. Gizlin is giving off a completely different vibe now. Even Kane pauses and seriously asks what debts he's talking about. With a calm smile, Gizlin explains that he's been the one managing all of Kane's requests with his own money, and now he wants at least 1,000 gold back. Kane is stunned. To him, that's a ridiculous number. He thought it should have cost no more than 100 gold. Besides, he believed Gizlin was doing all that because they were friends, like a friends with benefits situation. But Gizlin never saw them as friends. He's been this guy's doormat for too long, and now, if Kane values his life, he better pay up. He needs the money desperately, and isn't letting Kane walk away without paying his dues. The whole room falls silent, and even Gizlin's own knight, Ricardo, is sweating bullets after hearing such a bold demand. Kane shoots up from his seat, furious. He thinks Gizlin is getting too cocky, probably because of the rumors going around about him. To Kane, Gizlin is still just a leech feeding off this land. Boiling with rage, he clenches his fist, ready to crush him right there. But even as the punch flies straight at him, Gizlin doesn't even blink. At the last second, he shifts slightly, letting the punch miss completely. Shock fills the room. Kane swings again with full force, but Gizlin ducks and drives an open palm strike right into Kane's gut. The blow is so strong, it nearly makes the brute cough up blood. Kane tries to swing again, but this time Gizlin freezes his movement. Even though Kane doesn't actually take damage, he acts like he's in pain. The hooded figure rushes over, concerned, but it's obvious Kane's pride is the only thing hurt. Gizlin casually tells him to stop faking it wasn't even a real real hit, but Kane keeps playing the victim. Everyone watching in the pub is left stunned. Ghislain, the supposed weakling, just took Kane down without even trying. People are unsure how to react. Ghislain, of course, knows this bastard is faking it, and he knows exactly what Kane's trying to pull. Kane then turns to his hooded knight and smugly asks if he liked the performance. The knight gives him credit, it was a great act. Kane set things up perfectly to make it seem like Ghislain is the one at fault, just enough to justify a duel. Kane is eager to use this opportunity. If he helps the higher-ups take down Ghislain, he'll earn their support. Plus, it gives him a chance to sever ties with the Peridium household. So he plays along, pulls out a glove, and with some theatrical lines, gets ready to declare a duel. But before he can toss the glove, Ghislain beats him to it and throws the glove straight at Kane's face, challenging him first. After all, Kane insulted the heir of Peridium and assaulted his knight in front of everyone. So now, Ghislain demands a duel. Kane's face goes still, but only for a moment. Then he smirks, thinking Ghislain just signed his own death sentence by asking for the duel. But Ghislain keeps that confident, sassy smile on his face. He then turns to Ricardo and tells him to gather all the merchants protesting outside the castle. He wants them to witness something big, because Ghislain, the young master of the Peridium house, is about to make them some serious money. So, the festival got cancelled out of nowhere, and the electric atmosphere that had reached its peak suddenly fizzled out. This left a bunch of disappointed tourists stuck there, unable to leave or enjoy themselves basically, like a fire that never got to burn properly. In such a situation, if something exciting were to happen, it would be like a blessing for them. That's why, when Ghislain steps into the ring to face that bastard, the crowd absolutely erupts in excitement. People are pouring in from distant places, and the market vendors, who had been struggling, finally start making some money from these stranded tourists. That chubby merchant, the one who led the protests earlier, now has a full setup with a betting table, letting people place their bets on the fighters. Most of them are betting on Kane Loges, which makes sense, it seems like the safe option. Kane, the hulking brute, stands ready with his massive sword, prepared to begin. But he's clearly irritated that what was supposed to be a serious duel is now turning into some carnival spectacle. He makes it clear up front, he's not going to stop, even if Ghislain surrenders. But Ghislain isn't shaken. He can tell the bastard's real goal is to kill, surrender, or not. And since the crowd's big enough now, Ghislain officially kicks off the duel. Just then, a hooded guy interrupts, claiming that the betting can't proceed like this. Everyone's confused until the fat merchant explains no one has bet on young Master Ghislain. The crowd begins whispering. It's clear they've already written him off. They think he doesn't stand a chance. Kane even finds it funny, like even the marketplace wants nothing to do with Ghislain. Because the bet is so one-sided, they decide to adjust the rules to make it a little fairer. That's when Commander Scovan steps up with a bag full of money and places his bet on Ghislain. To everyone's surprise, Lady Elena also brings out a bag and bets on her brother. While people expected Scovan to show, Elena's appearance catches even Ghislain off guard, and the crowd's buzzing. She asks the merchant if that much money is enough, and he respectfully says yes. Now that Ghislain finally has some support, Kane agrees to start the duel, though he's clearly annoyed by how things are unfolding. The match begins, and Ghislain offers Kane the first strike, saying that since Kane's younger, Big Brother would love to give him the opening move. That cheap knockoff of the Hulk looks confused by the gesture, but Ghislain confidently draws his sword and calls him out. Kane goes silent for a second, then takes the bait. He gets into position, charges forward like a raging bull, and slams down with his enormous blade. Their swords clash violently. Kane puts every bit of his strength into the hit, but Ghislain doesn't even flinch, so Kane swings again, this time without thinking, and Ghislain dodges it with ease. The brute jumps up for a kick, but again, Ghislain casually avoids it. After this quick back and forth, both fighters retreat briefly. Kane grins with that same creepy smile, clearly enjoying himself. Ghislain can see the arrogance radiating off him. Belinda is sweating, watching her young master go toe-to-toe with this beast. She even urges Lady Elena to stop her brother. Meanwhile, the hooded guy is feeling smug, totally convinced Ghislain doomed. He believes Ghislain has already fallen into the trap the moment he chose to fight Kane. He was finished. In his mind, Ghislain will get overwhelmed by Kane's monstrous power, won't find a way to counter, and will burn out all his energy just dodging. Eventually, Ghislain will slip up and get killed. That's how Kane has crushed so many opponents' pure brute strength. But this time, Ghislain is more than a match, dodging every attack with insane agility. Even Kane has to admit that Ghislain become a lot harder to pin down. His skills have improved. Frustrated, Kane pushes even harder. He grabs his blade by the sharp edge with his bare hands and swings at Ghislain with full force. Though Ghislain manages to block the blow using his own sword, the attack traps him within Kane's crossguard. Then, using all his strength, Kane hurls Ghislain high into the sky. Everyone is left stunned, mouths wide open, watching the young master suspended in midair. The only person who seems thrilled is the hooded guy. He's convinced Ghislain is done for, but he's about to get a rude awakening. While still airborne, Ghislain channels mana into his legs and regains balance. Initially, Ghislaine had been holding back, but now that this jerk has pushed things too far, he's done playing nice. In a flash, he dashes toward Kane at godlike speed and zips past him. The hooded guy can't believe his eyes. Ghislaine managed to land unharmed using mana in his legs. To Ghislaine, this oversized brute is nothing but a clueless swordsman, probably someone who assumed he was unbeatable just because people got intimidated by a glimpse of his strength. But Ghislaine's here to crush that delusion and show him that raw power isn't everything. Kane, feeling mocked, charges again, demanding how Ghislaine plans to prove that. Ghislaine plants his feet, kicks up the hilt of his sword. Kane fights back with his own blade, but Ghislaine quickly sidesteps and even steps on Kane's sword, catching him off guard. With the brute briefly disarmed, Ghislaine seizes the opening and slashes him. After the intense exchange, Ghislaine comes to a sudden halt, while Kane starts bleeding from every spot that got struck. The crowd is speechless. Shock and awe ripple through them as they realize just how far Ghislaine has come. Whispers turn into panic. Could he actually win this? Elena, proud and confident, tells Belinda that her earlier fear was unnecessary. Commander Scovon watches with pride at the incredible display, but the hooded man is drenched in sweat. Noticing that the wounds Ghislaine inflicted are shallow, he could have gone deeper, but chose not to. That alone tells him Ghislaine is in full control. Kane, on the other hand, feels utterly humiliated witnessing such divine swordsmanship. Ghislaine now turns to the defeated Kane and throws away his sword. He doesn't plan to use it anymore. He thinks the gap in their skill is so massive that weapons aren't needed. He's going to finish this with his bare hands. That much disrespect is enough to make Kane's blood boil. Ghislaine is ready to teach him a brutal lesson with his fists. Since the big guy's strength lies in hand-to-hand combat, Ghislaine decides to handicap himself and fight in his opponent's preferred style. And to make things more interesting, he now bets 2,000 gold, double the original amount. The crowd is in disbelief hearing such a high wager for a bare-handed match, especially when it was supposed to be a sword duel. Meanwhile, the hooded man is practically melting, watching Ghislaine fearlessly challenge Kane without a weapon. He never thought he'd see the day. Still, a part of him believes Kane might have a shot. The fat merchant quickly announces that the fight is now officially barehanded and encourages everyone to place new bets. This time, more people are siding with Ghislaine, realizing that strength alone doesn't guarantee victory. Kane, still arrogant, accepts the challenge, but he refuses to drop his sword. He plans to use it against Ghislaine anyway. Belinda panics and pleads with Ghislaine to pick up his sword again, but the brute already starts swinging, and Ghislaine, calm and collected, completely unfazed, ready to knock some sense into this oversized fool. The moment that sword came crashing down, Ghislaine swiftly ducked so fast that his afterimage seemed to lag behind. He struck hard at the opponent's oversized leg, immediately following it with a brutal uppercut to the chin. Blood gushed from Kane's face. That single blow was enough to rattle his brain and bring one of his knees crashing to the ground. It was unreal. Kane hadn't even seen the hits coming. The audience was just as stunned as everyone else, absolutely loving the unexpected twist in the fight. Meanwhile, Ghislaine radiated pure confidence and charm, claiming he hadn't even gotten serious yet and still wanted to have more fun. This bruised the fatty's delicate ego, making him grit his teeth before charging at Ghislaine once more. But our boy danced around him effortlessly, dodging every strike with grace. The fight choreography was next level, even as the narrator. It was hard to keep up with Ghislaine's godlike moves. No matter what Kane tried, every attack was met with a counter and an even stronger hit. Blow after blow rained down on him. As Kane reeled from the pain, he found himself thinking back, remembering how Ghislaine once couldn't even meet his eyes, always bowing low whenever Kane showed up. But now, that dynamic had completely flipped. Kane kept getting hammered, turned into nothing more than a training dummy. His whole body was a canvas of bruises, his face so beaten up that not even his own mother would recognize him. At one point, Ghislaine grabbed Kane by the hair. Looking at this stubborn mess of a man, he couldn't help but feel pity not for Kane, but for his family. Count Logus had stood by House Peridium with unwavering loyalty, even when it was falling apart, simply because he was a close friend of Ghislaine's father. But Kane was nothing like his old man. The scene briefly shifted to the past. Kane was seen shouting at his father, furious about his endless support for House Peridium. He thought his father was throwing away valuable resources on a dying cause. It hadn't even been a week since Count Logus came back home, yet he was already preparing to leave again for Peridium. Kane had begged him not to go, his frustration boiling over at what he saw as blind loyalty. But the Count responded gently yet firmly. He was doing it because they were friends. That was the only reason. Back in the present, Ghislaine balled up his fist. Everyone expected another brutal punch, but instead, he reached out with a hand of friendship. It shocked everyone. No one had expected this gesture, least of all Kane. But to everyone's surprise, Kane accepted it and admitted defeat. The crowd was floored. Kane conceding the match left everyone speechless. The referee wasted no time in declaring Ghislaine the winner. Members of House Peridium were thrilled, watching their young master shine, while Elena was especially joyful to see her brother finally claim victory. But then, a hooded man stormed over to the defeated Kane and began scolding him. He couldn't believe Kane gave up so quickly, just because things weren't going his way. Kane didn't argue. He simply turned his face away and said he was done with the game. Since Kane failed to take Ghislaine down, the hooded guy started stressing about how he'd explain this to his seniors. Just then, our boy made another move, this time with a mischievous grin. Ghislain shouted loud enough for everyone to hear that the hooded man here had volunteered to cover the cost of all the meat and drinks for the entire crowd. The hooded guy flipped out, completely stunned by the sudden announcement. But the crowd? They went wild, thrilled at the idea of free food and booze. The hooded man immediately protested, yelling that he never agreed to any of this and demanding Ghislain take it back. But our guy just smiled, placed a firm hand on the guy's shoulder, and told him that this was the price of defeat. And no, this wasn't coming out of the existing bet. He told him to add another 2,000 gold on top of the original 1,000. If he tried to run, there'd be serious consequences. And when Ghislain said that, he wasn't joking. The threat in his words burned straight into the man's memory, leaving behind the image of someone not to be messed with. Later the next day, in Ghislain room, we find Ghislain staring at a treasure chest full of glittering gold coins. The amount of money he has is actually pretty huge. To give you an idea of how much it is, you could easily hire a small mercenary corps with this amount of money. But it takes a lot of time to grow money, and those bastards who want him killed won't wait for his forces to grow, so he only has a limited amount of time to execute the business plan he has in mind. That's when Belinda and his sister come up to him with satisfied smiles on their faces. The way they're looking at him feels like they have some ulterior motive hidden behind their smiles. He quickly questions why they're here, to which his little sister politely asks where he plans to spend all this money. Of course, Ghislain catches on to what she's implying, so he directly asks her if she wants some, to which she responds that she's just asking. Belinda then speaks up, stating that she has a pretty good idea of where he's going to spend it all. She is sure that since Lady Amelia's birthday is coming up soon, Ghislain must be planning to put on a grand show to buy his fiancée an expensive present. But we all know that our boy isn't thinking about this at all. However, the mention of a fiancé catches Ghislain completely off guard. He literally does not even remember if he even has a fiancé. The maid laughs softly, thinking he must be feeling shy. They know he's pretending to be clueless because he's embarrassed that they figured him out. Still, since Elena is noticing that her brother is quite absent-minded lately, she decides to remind him that they're talking about Amelia of Rayfold County. Finally, the name triggers some memories in Ghislain's mind, but they're not exactly fond ones. He then turns to Belinda and asks when his father will return. Belinda guesses maybe in a week. That's good enough for Ghislain. With a full week available, he decides to visit Rayfold County. Belinda seems puzzled after all. It's not even her birthday yet, so why is he leaving now? But Ghislain just says he plans to collect some money from them. Then, we finally see Amelia Rayfold herself. At first glance, she looks expressionless, maybe even dead inside, but it's hard not to notice her other prominent features. She's currently in a town, offering a pair of sandals to a poor little girl. Apparently, they're her own sandals. The little girl hesitates, unsure if she should accept them, but Amelia reassures her, saying if anyone should walk barefoot on her land, it should be her. She then orders her soldiers to give the girl and her family food and shelter immediately. The soldiers act fast, and as Amelia walks away with her escort of soldiers, the townspeople call out their heartfelt thanks. Later, in the gardens of Rayfold County, we see a man washing Amelia's feet with such devotion it might actually make you jealous. He's clearly proud of her accomplishments. This man is Bernaf, Amelia's escort knight. She tells him that while her father ruled with strict obedience, the common people follow whoever feeds and shelters them. Bernaf remarks that by doing this, she's won the people's hearts, something that will help her in the upcoming succession battle. But Amelia doesn't seem too interested in that. Instead, she casually puts her foot right over his face in a dominantly teasing manner and asks how his duel went against the best swordsman in the north. He apologizes, explaining that he deliberately lost to avoid drawing attention. If he had won, people would have started noticing her, and it's not yet time to reveal her power. He then kisses her feet with deep loyalty, swearing full support. Amelia sees this as natural after all. She's the one who raised him, and she has no intention of letting him stay weak. She then starts questioning him about the merchants. Bernaf assures her there's nothing to worry about when it comes to the Arctium Merchant Guild. All the materials needed for rebuilding the Forest of Beasts outpost, which got half destroyed during the recent orc attack in Peridium, are being bought through her guild. In short, her merchants are reclaiming every bit of support money that Count Rayfold sends to Peridium every year. On top of that, they're also recruiting knights and soldiers who are leaving Peridium, many of them experienced warriors, trained from battling barbarian tribes. So far, her plan to drain Peridium dry is going perfectly. She's pleased to hear it. Just as she said before, she reminds Bernaf to keep everything looking like an ordinary merchant guild and to be extremely careful. Their real identity must stay hidden until they've gathered enough strength. Just then, her butler shows up. Bernaf is annoyed that he entered the garden without permission, but the butler quickly shares urgent news from the castle gates. Young Lord Ghislain Peridium has arrived. Although he's supposed to be her fiancé, Amelia doesn't seem the least bit happy at the mention of his name. She coldly asks the butler why Ghislain is here, and the man starts sweating as he reveals the reason he's come to talk about the Merchant Guild. Both Amelia and Bernaf freeze in shock when they hear this. We then find ourselves in the visitor's room, where she's seated across from our boy, Ghislain. He tries to keep things cool, greeting her with his usual laid-back tone, but she's clearly not having it. Her face twists with contempt. She's pissed that he showed up unannounced, assuming he still hasn't learned the basics of etiquette. Ghislain casually reminds her that her birthday's coming up, so he thought he'd drop by early with a gift. He places a flower on the table and explains he got it from a nearby merchant guild, saying it smells nice and that he might start buying flowers from there regularly. If he remembers correctly, the guild's name is Arctium. Of course, she instantly figures out what he's getting at, but pretends she has no clue. She accepts the flower, says she'll be on her way, and starts to leave. That's when Ghislain calls her name, his voice serious now, asking her to sit. She immediately feels the pressure coming off him heavy, intense. What shakes her the most is that this is coming from the same guy who used to freeze and barely talk around her. Wasting no time, Ghislain cuts to the chase. He wants money. Around 10,000 gold coins. Naturally, she's not thrilled by the demand, especially not from her so-called fiancé who just barged in like this. She wonders if his father put him up to it, but Ghislain clears that up. His father has nothing to do with this. Besides, he knows she's not planning on marrying him anyway. He suspects she's aiming for the lordship of the land, and, given her secret preparations, she's got a real shot. But he also warns her if word about her power moves leaks out in Rayfold, she might lose her chance at succession. That hits a nerve. She glares at him, dead serious, warning him not to joke about that. Not even as a joke, Ghislain calmly assures her he'll keep her secret, for now, but he hints that might change if he walks out of the room empty-handed. Still, she stays sharp and sassy. She's already figured out how to deal with him. She calls out to her knight, Bernaf, and the loyal feet licker quickly walks in, bowing politely to Lord Ghislain. Meanwhile, in Ghislain's thoughts, we find out this knight has always been by Amelia's side. The guy's not just loyal, he's skilled enough to rival the strongest swordsman in the north. Sensing what's about to go down, Ghislain warns her if she tries to kill him here, it could spark a war. Does she really have time for that, with the succession ceremony so close? But Amelia already has a plan. Her excuse? A random intruder burst in, caused trouble, and her escort knight handled it. That's the story the world will hear. No hesitation, she orders her knight to kill him. And Bernaf? He's all too eager to obey. Sword drawn, ready to strike. But Ghislain's not about to roll over and die. If that's how she wants to play it, then he's ready to get serious too. The stage is all set for another divine level showdown between two skilled warriors, so grab your parrots and buckle up for what's about to unfold. But just when we're hoping for a proper, no bullshit showdown between two men of honor, this piece of shit knight pulls some sneaky-ass crap. Out of nowhere, Ghislain hears a slight rustling behind him, and before he can fully react, an assassin leaps out from an empty armor suit, trying to stab through the sofa and pin him down. But this dumbass is way too slow. Ghislain rolls to the ground like a goddamn ninja, kicks the bastard square in the chest, and launches him right out the fucking window. The lady and her little lapdog stand there like stunned idiots. They never expected him to react so quickly and gracefully. Ghislain doesn't hold back his disgust, calling out that two-faced bitch for acting all polite while setting up a damn ambush. Wasting no time, he lunges at the knight, and the two clash swords. Ghislain mocks him, asking if Rayfold forgot what chivalry means. The knight offers an apology, but fires back, saying Ghislain was the one who barged in uninvited and threw around weak threats, disturbing the lady. The two go at each other fiercely, both trying to land a clean hit, but it's obvious our boy has the edge. His reflexes are on point. He even lands a solid kick that sends the knight stumbling back. The knight clearly underestimated him, assuming he was all talk with no skill, but now he's realizing the harsh truth. Ghislain is anything but a novice. Meanwhile, Amelia is fuming as she watches her knight getting pushed around by someone she once considered a lowly thug. She orders him, in a chilling tone, to stop playing around and bring her Ghislain's head if he truly wants to call himself her knight. Fired up by his mistress's command, the knight starts taking the fight seriously. Now it's about her honor, and he won't let her down. He confidently challenges Ghislain to come at him. Ghislain, wearing a cocky grin, taunts the guy for acting all bossy when he's nothing but an escort knight. But since the fool's asking for it, Ghislain's more than happy to deliver. They clash again, this time at full force. The knight stops holding back, and even manages to cut Ghislain's face with a sharp strike. Their movements are so fast, it's nearly impossible to keep track only after images linger in their wake. Amelia, now even more restless, can't believe what she's witnessing. This was supposed to be a punk, yet he's keeping up with her elite knight, Bernaf. The fight is absolutely brutal. Every time Ghislain goes in for a hit, the knight dodges. Every time the knight strikes, Ghislain dodges back. The cycle continues, blow after blow. Ghislain tries to pull the same move he used earlier, but this time, he gets slammed to the ground. Sensing an opening, the knight charges, sword ready. But Ghislain recovers in time, flipping and twisting mid-air before landing back on his feet. By now, Ghislain has realized that the knight is using mana to absorb his attacks. Meanwhile, the knight himself starts to see that Ghislain isn't anything like the rumors claimed. His swordsmanship doesn't seem formally trained. It feels more like a style forged through real, brutal experience. The knight even wonders if Ghislain has fought barbarians so often that he adopted their chaotic combat style. He admits it might work in a messy battlefield, but insists it won't work against him. Now determined to end the fight, the knight steps up his offense. Ghislain, though, knows this isn't going to be easy. The knight's sharp, precise strikes aimed at his head are throwing off his sense of distance and rhythm. On top of that, the size difference between them at such close range makes it hard to overpower him through technique alone. Truth be told, Ghislain should have never picked a fight with this guy in the first place. It's like facing the final boss with beginner gear. But hey, he didn't exactly have the luxury to gear up beforehand, so he decides to stop holding back. He conjures a mana thread that zips right past the knight's ear, catching him off guard. In that split second, Ghislain draws a hidden sword and smacks the knight hard at the back of his head. He follows it up with a brutal kick to the face. Burnaf gets dazed from the double hit, leaving the spider lady in utter shock. Then Ghislain leaps into the air and comes crashing down, but before he can land the blow, the knight uses his raw body strength to hurl him away with a powerful shove. Burnaf urgently tells his mistress to leave right away. He can't promise her safety anymore if things continue like this. From here on, he vows to give everything he's got, but warns her that staying might get her caught in the chaos. Ghislain, on the other hand, is fired up. He hasn't had such an exciting opponent in a long while. Meanwhile, Amelia is sprinting down the corridor, clutching her cat, visibly shaken. She's furious. How dare that guy humiliate her like this? And who the hell leaked information about the Merchant Guild to Ghislain? There's no way he could have known all that unless someone helped him. All those rumors about him killing orcs, defending his little sister from assassins, even beating the heir of Loges, she used to think it was just luck or overblown nonsense. But now she's being forced to admit that maybe he really has gotten stronger. As she runs, she notices something odd. None of the guards are around. That ticks her off even more, but soon she sees why. All the soldiers are down, sprawled out across the floor, and the one responsible? None other than Belinda. Amelia freezes, stunned to see Peridium's maid here. Before she can react, Belinda places a dagger to her throat. That's when Belinda notices a spider dangling near Amelia's face. She snatches the little creature with clear disgust and complains about the damn thing. Then, Belinda brings up a memory she remembers the day of the engagement ceremony, when she overheard a conversation between Count Rayfold and the Lord of Peridium. Apparently, Amelia's siblings used to bully her for always being surrounded by creepy spiders, so Amelia had started raising them herself and took revenge. Belinda isn't sure whether that was a way for Amelia to deal with trauma or just her asserting herself. She then apologizes if her words sound harsh, but says flatly it doesn't suit Amelia. With that, she crushes the spider under her foot. After stomping it mercilessly, Belinda asks Amelia rather coldly to cooperate a little, but before we get to hear what exactly Belinda wants, the scene shifts back to the boys' fight, and things have escalated. The night is now radiating a terrifyingly dark energy, and the air is so thick with mana that even Ghislain is beginning to feel nervous. The knight is clearly pissed off. He's furious that Ghislain had the nerve to call him an entertaining opponent like some low-rank mercenary. He hates that someone he considers a lowly, unserious fool would dare claim to be a noble or stand on the same level as Amelia. But of course, Ghislain is a noble, and he doesn't think an escort knight like Burnaf has any right to speak down to him. Burnaf makes the first move, and they begin clashing swords. He's seething, convinced Ghislain is mocking noble pride. His attacks are relentless, blow after blow, while Ghislain holds his ground, impressed by the sheer power and aggression. But Ghislain has reached his limit too. He fights back with just as much fury. The knight isn't holding anything back now. In one heavy strike, he knocks Ghislain off balance and immediately follows up with a stab aimed for a critical blow. Time seems to stop as that blade slices through the air, and blood splatters when it grazes Ghislain's shoulder. Burnaf is stunned. Ghislain willingly took the hit to the shoulder just to deflect the attack. Using the injury as leverage, Ghislain shoves Burnaf back, but Burnaf quickly counters with a vicious kick and mocks him, saying this is the difference between a real warrior and some brat who treats swordplay like a game. The kick sends Ghislain flying, but it's still not enough to take him down. In fact, he's still amused. The knight's speed, range, and non-stop attacks keep him in total control of the battle. Any attempt to get in close or grapple is instantly shut down. Now locked in a clash, their blades are pressed against each other, and it looks like Ghislain doesn't have the raw strength to break free with his current mana, but he's playing the long game. He knows the knight hasn't seen it yet, the trump card he's been saving. Ghislain's unique mana cultivation technique is still hidden. In a flash, Ghislain activates his third core, completely tipping the scales of the battle. With just one devastating blow, he disarms the knight, sending his sword flying and leaving him stunned. Burnaf can only wonder how this guy is able to wield such overwhelming mana during combat. Now that Burnaf is completely vulnerable, Ghislain presses his blade to the knight's head, freezing him in place. Just then, Belinda storms in, dragging Amelia along. The once arrogant noblewoman is now a mess, crying and quickly agreeing to hand over the 10,000 gold, begging them to just leave and never come back. Though Ghislain is satisfied that he got what he came for, there's still a tinge of annoyance. It didn't have to go this far. Things would have been so much simpler if Amelia had just cooperated from the beginning. Regardless, He pulls back his sword and turns to Amelia to drop another bombshell. The price has now doubled. It's 20,000 gold. In the aftermath, Amelia's palace is in total disarray. Furious, she's flinging things in frustration. Not only did her knight lose, but now she's stuck paying twice as much. The knight tries to apologize, admitting that Ghislain turned out to be far stronger than any of the rumors had implied. He takes full responsibility, saying it was his failure to properly evaluate the opponent. Ghislain's mana output had far exceeded what even an elite knight should be capable of. That only makes Amelia angrier. When Bernaf suggests reporting the incident to Duke Delphine, she loses it and slaps him. Grabbing him by the collar, she lashes out because what he's saying isn't even an option. She's clearly scared out of her mind. If the Duke finds out what happened today, she's finished. The truth is, Amelia had formed a secret alliance with Duke Delphine, without her father's knowledge. In return for his support in her rebellion, she promised to help him take down Peridium. If this alliance is exposed, her own siblings would kill her. And if Ghislain knows about the Merchant Guild's hidden secrets, he might already be aware of her deal with the Duke too, which means one thing: he has to be eliminated. She's willing to go to any length to make that happen. The knight agrees with her line of thinking. She then asks about Ghislain's condition. The knight explains that although he managed to injure Ghislain in several places, the worst damage is on his shoulder. Plus, with how much mana he burned in the fight, Ghislain won't be in peak shape for a while. But since they plan to eliminate him without leaving a trace, they can't afford to use any knights from their own territory. Amelia anticipated this, and had already made arrangements. She had secretly trained a different group of knights for exactly this kind of situation. Even Bernaf wasn't aware of them. She reminds him about the Wildcats, a unit made up of war orphans, people with no rank or nation, only raw talent. These Wildcats are elite mercenaries, often referred to as traffickers due to their brutal efficiency. She gives Bernaf a map with a marked location, and tells him to gather about a dozen of them, only those with strong mana control. Bernaf realizes the location makes perfect tactical sense. It's a narrow ravine, the only path between Rolled territory and Peridium. Remote and constricted, it's an ideal ambush point where they can take care of things discreetly. Without wasting time, Bernaf sets out to put the plan in motion. This time, Amelia is hell-bent on making Ghislain pay for humiliating her. Meanwhile, Ghislain had already left Amelia's palace and was riding inside his carriage. As they moved, he carefully bandaged his injured body. Along with him were old man Fergus and Belinda, who looked concerned. They asked if he was okay, and Ghislain reassured them his wounds weren't too deep. And honestly, things could have been worse, especially considering how much he had pushed himself. Still, what mattered most to him was that the 20,000 gold he got from Amelia was more than enough to fund the initial steps to rebuild their territory. That kind of money was equal to saving several years' worth of hard work. Sure, it would have been ideal if he could have killed Amelia too, but doing that would have definitely triggered a war, something he couldn't afford when his land's safety was on the line. Peridium was already having trouble dealing with the barbarians, so he chose to retreat quietly rather than make things worse. Besides, just knowing the secret behind the Arctium Merchant Guild was already a major blow to Amelia. Belinda watched him with worried eyes, and asked if everything was going according to his plan. She remembered his earlier instructions to subdue the guards if she heard fighting, and to take Amelia hostage once she stepped outside. Ghislain confirmed that yes, those were his exact words. Just then, he felt a sharp pain and coughed up blood. It was the backlash from unlocking his third core. Though his condition was better than the last time, this sort of reaction every time he used his powers was far from ideal. He needed a faster way to boost his mana. Belinda quickly grabbed his hand, noticing how messed up the energy flow in his body was. Without wasting a second, she pulled out a needle and pierced the back of his hand with lightning-fast precision. Strangely, Ghislain found the process calming. When she finished, he exhaled a long breath, feeling a bit of relief. His tangled mana pathways had started to clear. What amazed him even more was how skilled Belinda's technique was. This wasn't something just anyone could do. It required a deep understanding of mana. It made sense if he considered that it was his mother who had brought Belinda into the palace. But even then, Ghislain couldn't figure out why someone with her level of ability was serving as a headmaid in the countryside. Still, having more skilled people around was never a bad thing, especially since the enemies they had faced so far were likely just the beginning. Belinda, sensing his thoughts, reassured him that she'd support him no matter what, but she demanded to know what he planned to do with such a huge amount of money from Lady Amelia. Ghislain casually replied that he needed to spend money, and since Amelia was the only wealthy person he knew, he decided to take advantage of that. Both Fergus and Belinda were stunned. Was he seriously saying he ended his engagement just for the money? And now, once Count Rayfold heard about it, there'd be serious consequences. That made Ghislain smile. He jokingly asked Belinda if she really trusted him. She barely hid her irritation. She had just told him she trusted him unconditionally, and now he was asking again? If he truly trusted her too, he should at least tell her what he intended to do with the gold. Ghislain answered with a single phrase: the Forest of Beasts. That left Belinda completely speechless. Ghislain then explained that he was going to use the money to pioneer the Forest of Beasts. Fergus almost leapt out of his seat in shock. That forest had seen failed development attempts since the time of Ghislain's great-grandfather. Ghislain reminded the old man of the request he had made earlier. Fergus finally understood what Ghislain was hinting at, but he hesitated to respond. Eventually, he admitted that the person Ghislaine asked about was indeed at the location he'd mentioned, but he wasn't sure if visiting them was a good idea. Still, Ghislaine had already made up his mind. No matter what, he was going to meet that person. Belinda, however, firmly disagreed. She insisted they return home, especially considering his current condition. Ghislaine acknowledged her concern, but brought up a harsh truth. Did she really think Amelia would let them go so easily after everything that happened? Knowing her personality, he was certain she'd try to kill him just to protect her secret alliance with Duke Delphine from getting out. Belinda tries to show off her thin arms, confidently telling her young master that she can easily handle anyone who dares to come their way. She even reminds him they've got Old Man Fergus as their knight. Though Ghislaine trusts Belinda and knows she's dependable, he also knows that's not the role she's meant to play. What he needs is a proper vanguard, and they're on their way to meet him. Later, they arrive at a place that has only a single shack in sight. The carriage driver knocks on the door, but there's no response. It feels like the place is abandoned. Still, Fergus confirms this is the exact address they were given. Eventually, someone does answer, a man whose entire face is buried under thick facial hair. He immediately demands to know who they are. Everyone feels uneasy around this strange man, but Ghislaine remains completely unfazed. Belinda even whispers if this could really be the guy they've been looking for, because he doesn't look like someone who could fight, let alone survive what's coming. But Ghislaine assures her with full confidence, this is the man. The old man eyes Ghislaine and bluntly tells him to stop wasting his time and leave. That's when Ghislaine calls him by his real title, the ex-captain of the Ratatosk mercenaries, Jillian. At the mention of the name, the old man's expression shifts. As he turns around, Ghislaine warmly reaches out his hand, inviting him to join them. Both the old man and the carriage driver are stunned at the name drop. See, the Ratatosk mercenaries were once a legendary group made up only of master warriors skilled with almost every weapon. Though the group doesn't exist anymore, their reputation is so massive that even knights from faraway lands have heard their name at least once, and Gillian was their captain. That's who Ghislaine has traveled all this way to find. Without warning, the old man hurls his axe straight at Ghislaine, but the guy doesn't even flinch, just slightly tilts his head, letting the axe zip right past. Instantly, the others jump into action, surrounding their young master in defensive stances, ready for a fight. But Gillian isn't here to play games. He bluntly asks why Ghislaine is here. Belinda steps in front, thinking this guy is totally insane, but Ghislaine simply says one thing: eternal punishment. He goes on to claim he knows the cure for the disease Jillian's daughter is suffering from. That alone is enough to catch Jillian's full attention. His daughter's condition causes constant high fever, frequent blood coughing, and red rashes that bloom like flower petals across her skin. The pain she endures, almost like a prisoner under torture, is the reason this incurable disease was named eternal punishment. At last, we finally see the girl everyone's been talking about. She's screaming in agony, her voice echoing as Jillian rushes into the shack to help his daughter, Rachel. Ghislaine can tell it's not too late to save her. In his past life, he'd actually searched for Jillian to recruit him, but the man had ended his own life soon after Rachel died. Judging from the condition of this house, it's obvious that everything Jillian owned was spent trying to save her. Now, all he has left are his weapons. The girl, clearly in unbearable pain, begs her father to make it stop. Seeing her like that, Ghislaine doesn't waste a second. He tells Jillian that he's starting the treatment immediately, but just as he's about to act, Belinda stops him. She doesn't understand what he's trying to do. This illness isn't something brute force can cure. Even priests have failed, calling it a punishment from the gods. She seriously doubts there's anything Ghislaine can do, but Ghislaine simply shrugs her hand off and makes it clear he can cure her. And if Belinda really trusts him like she claimed, she better prove it now. That shuts her up. He hands her a paper listing all the herbs they need and tells her to go fetch them. When Belinda sees the list, she's stunned. The reason Ghislaine knows all this? For wandering mercenaries, survival often depends on knowledge. The illness, eternal punishment, may not be curable now, but a cure will be discovered in the future. It even became a hot topic back then, especially because the treatment turned out to be surprisingly simple. That's why Ghislaine remembers it so well. The only issue? The ingredients are crazy expensive, one of them being a rare herb called Fairy's Blessing. Now that he has the Fairy's Blessing and the rest of the herbs, he gets to work. He chops them up, packs them tightly in a bottle, and pours distilled alcohol over the mix. After shaking it thoroughly and letting it sit, he adds the remaining ingredients, stirs it all together, and prepares the final potion. The remedy is complete. He hands it to Jillian and tells him to have Rachel drink it. With no reason to hesitate, Jillian quickly pours the medicine into his daughter's mouth. As soon as it reaches her stomach, the effect kicks in. Her bruised and red skin begins healing, and slowly, her body returns to normal, leaving everyone in shock. No one, not even Gillian, expected it to work, but Ghislaine already knew it would. Gillian looks at him in disbelief and asks how he managed to cure her when even divine power had failed. Ghislaine explains that priests' powers aren't absolute. They can boost a body's vitality and help it recover faster, but that's not the same as actually curing an illness from its root. Trembling, Jillian reaches for Ghislaine and asks, is she really going to be okay? Ghislaine gives him the answer he's been desperate to hear. It'll take a couple of months, but she'll make a full recovery. Gillian's eyes widen, Despite being a strong, towering man, he drops to his knees, bows his head, and humbly asks what Ghislain wants in return. Surely, he must have come for something. But Jillian admits he has nothing to offer but his aging body. If Ghislain wants a servant, he'll obey every order like a dog. But Ghislain makes it clear he doesn't want a slave. What he wants is Gillian, the captain of the Ratatosk mercenaries. Hearing that, Jillian looks up, and what he sees stuns him. The same eyes filled with dreams. Without wasting another moment, he stands tall, grabs his axe, and chops off his long ponytail. Now, he looks like a true warrior, a massive, confident figure radiating strength. He asks if anyone besides Ghislain's group has been here. Ghislain tells him it's just him and his 3 companions. Gillian then asks if anyone holds a grudge against him. Ghislain replies with full confidence, yes, and there'll be more in the future. With that, Jillian grabs his harpoon, charges it with mana, and hurls it with godlike speed straight through his hut into the forest. Moments later, he reels it back in, and stuck on the barbs is a man who had been spying, now caught like prey. Jillian grabs the intruder with his massive hand, his grip firm like a vice, and demands to know who sent him. But the spy seems more curious about how Jillian even knew he was hiding in the woods. Turning to Ghislain, Gillian asks what he wants to do with the captured man. Calmly, Ghislain says he already knows who sent him, but he'd rather not sully his blade on a day like this. Still, he admits it seems unavoidable. Just then, Gillian stops him from drawing his sword and promises to deal with the intruder himself. With that, Gillian tightens his colossal grip, and the spy's screams ring out through the forest. Once it's over, the mercenary respectfully bows to his master. Meanwhile, Belinda is clearly disturbed after witnessing Jillian kill so effortlessly and without hesitation. She's left shaken, unable to understand why Ghislain would recruit someone so dangerous. The big guy, however, drops to his knees and pledges his life to Ghislain. In return, Ghislain gives him a confident smile, clearly pleased to have him on his side. The scene shifts to a solitary hut in the middle of a swamp, where the wildcat traffickers are in disarray after hearing that their reconnaissance unit has been wiped out. The senior member, Virgo, captain of the squad, urges everyone to calm down. He remarks that, based on Burnaf's intel, Ghislain shouldn't have even been able to locate the unit, let alone eliminate them. He questions whether the unit was incompetent or if the intel was flawed. Just then, the reporter mentions that Gillian has joined Ghislain's group. Enraged, Virgo grabs the reporter by the throat and demands confirmation. Barely able to breathe, the reporter affirms that he saw it with his own eyes. Virgo is stunned by the news he never thought Gillian would return to killing. Apparently, Virgo was also part of the Ratatosk mercenaries, the same group Jillian once belonged to. Back with our party, Jillian is now driving the carriage. Inside, Belinda feels suffocated by the sheer number of weapons crammed into the space. She wonders if it was really necessary for Jillian to bring so many. Couldn't a sword or two have sufficed? She even questions whether he might be some kind of arms dealer. In the other carriage, Fergus and Ricardo serve as the rear guard, keeping watch from behind. Ghislain tries to remind Belinda that Gillian will definitely put those weapons to good use, so she'll have to endure it for now. Their priority is escaping the rift safely. Belinda then brings up the spy they captured, saying she's convinced it was Amelia who sent him. What worries her more is the mask the spy wore. It bore the mark of the Wildcat Traffickers, a powerful guild in Rayfold. Their primary trades include smuggling, assassination, drugs, and human trafficking. They're rotten to the core, taking on the dirtiest jobs. Many of their members are skilled ex-mercenaries, making them a dangerous and secretive force. Ghislain is surprised that Belinda knows so much, especially considering she rarely leaves the castle. She simply replies that she learned all this before she started working there. In any case, she warns him to stay alert since the enemy won't give up easily. Ghislain appreciates her concern, recognizing how much she cares, and reassures her that he'll be fine, especially now that they have Jillian on their side. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifts. 2 assassins burst out, trailing the carriage from opposite sides. In the blink of an eye, they leap from the sand, aiming straight for Jillian. But this absolute beast of a man doesn't flinch. He grabs a sword in one hand and an axe in the other, effortlessly blocking both their strikes at once. Not only does he stop the attack, he twists his weapon so viciously that the assassin's arms are ripped clean off. Then, without missing a beat, Jillian slashes through them like they're made of paper. More attackers appear, triggering traps they'd already set. Giant logs come crashing down toward them. But before disaster strikes, Jillian snatches the reins, yanks the bridle, and the horses slam to a halt just in time. The area is now crawling with these eerie assassins, all with weapons fused into their hands. That's when Virgo steps in, casually mentioning that Jillian was once the captain of the Ratatosk mercenaries. He mocks Jillian, calling him a coward for disbanding the group just because of his daughter. But Jillian doesn't seem too bothered by his accusations. Virgo keeps talking, bitterly recalling how he had to live a life he never wanted after the group fell apart. He tells Jillian not to pretend like he doesn't remember his old comrade. It seems Jillian genuinely has no clue who this creepy bastard is, but Virgo's convinced he's faking it. Determined to jog Jillian's memory, Virgo signals his men to attack. Ghislain offers to jump in and help, but Jillian just brushes him off. These guys clearly have unfinished business with him. As the assassins close in to skewer Jillian with their blades, he slices through them like they're vegetables. More come charging from another direction. Gillian braces himself, and the first one gets chopped down instantly. The next attacker doesn't fare much better. His hands are torn apart. Watching from a distance, Virgo isn't surprised. Gillian was captain for a reason. Since head-on attacks are pointless, Virgo orders his men to split up and flank him. But Gillian, never one to hesitate, mounts his horse with axe in hand and charges. One mighty swing, and he obliterates them, not letting a single one get near. Realizing they can't touch him, they target the horse instead, but they still don't stand a chance. Gillian swinging his axe like a damn blender, reducing them all to a bloody mess. Finally, Virgo himself jumps into the fight. Gillian quickly raises his shield to defend. Furious and spitting rage, Virgo screams that Gillian destroyed his life and won't be allowed to ruin his plans too. For that, Gillian must die. Virgo slaughters the horse Gillian was riding, but the big guy jumps off without a scratch. Virgo wastes no time, lunging at him with his sword, but Gillian meets the blow head-on with his axe. In the middle of the clash, Gillian calmly tells him he's no longer the captain of the Ratatosk mercenaries. Then he lands a crushing blow that leaves Virgo staggering. With ease, Gillian tosses him aside, blood dripping from his mouth. Virgo struggles to comprehend. If Gillian's not the captain, then who is? Gillian begins channeling his mana, stating that he's cast aside his past. Now, he's nothing more than a loyal subordinate of young Lord Ghislain. The declaration leaves Virgo stunned. Furious that the man who wrecked his life is now acting so calm, he charges in like a madman. The two clash again, their weapons colliding in a brutal dance, but it's obvious Virgo is the one struggling. Driven purely by anger, he accuses Gillian of destroying the mercenary company. After Gillian left, everything collapsed. Virgo lost his power and had to live in disgrace just to survive. But Gillian says nothing. He just keeps swinging, attack after attack, pushing Virgo back. Finally, Virgo lands a solid kick that breaks Gillian's shield. He roars that he was willing to throw away his whole life to make the Ratatosk mercenaries legendary, but Gillian tossed it all away, only to serve as a lapdog for some pampered noble. Virgo hurls his deadly ninja daggers, but Gillian spins his axe and knocks away 3 of them. Then Virgo rushes in, dagger in hand, but it flies past Gillian as the clash continues. No matter how strong Gillian once was, Virgo is confident he's not as powerful now as he was back then. While Gillian wasted time trying to cure his daughter, Virgo kept fighting, growing stronger through endless battles. He's convinced that this cheap Zeus knockoff is no match for him anymore. Virgo swiftly snatches up the 3 daggers from the ground and hurls them straight at Gillian, but the absolute unit, Gillian, casually catches them with his bare hand like they're nothing. As Virgo charges again, Gillian swings his axe, and though the strike comes within inches of Virgo's skull, he manages to dodge just in time. Then Gillian channels mana into his hand mid-air and halts another dagger with ease. He calmly asks Virgo if revenge is truly the only thing driving him. Virgo, stunned by Gillian's casual display of mana control, quickly realizes that Gillian hadn't even begun to show his full power until now. Before Virgo can react, Gillian's axe comes crashing into his face, launching him with brutal force into a nearby tree. As the old man calmly walks toward him, he questions why Virgo waited so long to come after him if revenge was really all he wanted. With a sneer, Virgo admits he already visited Gillian's former home, but there was no sign of the once feared Ratatosk mercenaries captain, only a feeble old man, not even worth killing. It hits hard, realizing the man he once idolized was gone, but Gillian can still see the fire of a warrior burning in Virgo. To honor that, he tosses him a sword and draws his own second blade. He reminds Virgo that, while he now serves someone else, just for this moment, he'll offer the highest form of respect by facing him as the captain of the Ratatosk mercenaries. For Virgo, this is almost surreal. He grabs the dagger and charges in. The clash is intense. Their weapons collide in a flurry of sparks, both warriors appearing to be evenly matched. But then, Gillian lands a brutal blow, driving his blade deep into Virgo's ribs. Despite the searing pain, Virgo refuses to back down and counters, but his final strike falls short. Gillian stands ready to deliver the final blow. Just before he does, Gillian solemnly vows to remember him as the 5th unit commander of the Ratatosk mercenaries, Virgo Villanos. That acknowledgement means everything to Virgo. He smiles, proud and at peace, just before Gillian's sword ends his life. With the battle over, Gillian quietly picks up the dagger Virgo had used. Soon after, Ghislain arrives with Belinda, and they're immediately greeted by the gruesome sight of severed limbs and corpses everywhere. Belinda casually points out that there's a lot of money to be made looting the bodies. Gillian apologizes for the delay, but Ghislain reassures him there's no need. In fact, he's now more impressed with Gillian than ever. Back in his previous life, when Ghislain had just started out as a mercenary, stories of Gillian had helped shape his path toward becoming the mercenary king. Now, he's thankful that his swift actions have earned him such a dependable comrade. Then he notices Gillian holding the dagger Virgo had used, and asks if he knew the man. Gillian immediately confirms they were once comrades. That mention of old friends triggers a flood of memories in Ghislain. He starts to wonder what his own former companions are up to now. Since he hasn't met them yet in this timeline, he's sure they're still out there living their lives, but he's determined to find them and bring them into his party when the time comes. For now, with everything settled, he decides to go along with Belinda's idea and scavenge anything valuable from the bodies. She's more than happy with that and tells Gillian to take the lead, but the stoic warrior reminds her that he's not her subordinate. 2 days later, the group finally finally arrives in Peridium territory, after what felt like an endless journey. After traveling for so many days, they had at last entered the land. The brute asks if they've reached Peridium, and our guy confirms it. As Ghislain peeks out of the carriage at his homeland, a wave of emotion hits him. There's comfort in knowing he has a home to return to. When he first ran away, he believed he could come back anytime he wanted, but that belief turned out to be completely wrong. He then looks at Jillian and asks what he thinks of the place. Jillian is momentarily thrown off by the question. Unsure how to respond, he simply replies, "It's great, but our guy knows he's just being polite." In truth, the place is in terrible condition, and Gillian, though reluctant to admit it, knows it too. The homes are all old and crumbling, and renovation isn't even an option. The fields lie completely barren, uncultivated because the farmers have all been drafted into the military, leaving the land neglected. Gillian shares some rumors he's heard that Peridium is constantly at war due to the northern barbarians, but now that he's seeing it with his own eyes, he realizes the situation is far worse than he ever imagined. Our boy calmly tells him that fixing all of this is exactly why he needs the strength of the Ratatosk mercenaries and their captain. He knows the road ahead is going to be long. This fight isn't just about survival, it's about wiping out everything tied to Duke Delphine and reclaiming what was lost. He's determined to breathe life back into this dying land, no matter what it takes. Finally, as they roll over the castle's stone pavement, Belinda is suddenly stunned by an unexpected sight. Standing right in their path is none other than our guy's father, the man who had vanished at the very beginning of the story, the Lord of Peridium himself. Later inside the Peridium castle, several administrators were discussing the situation with the Count, when Zwalter suddenly suggested reducing their military forces. The men looked genuinely shocked hearing that. One of them immediately pointed out that maintaining the front lines would become difficult if they started cutting down troops. Another advised the Count to simply request more support from the Rayfold family. But the general administrator, Homern, revealed that the Rayfolds were actually the ones who reduced the support funds in the first place. According to him, the Rayfold family was currently gathering soldiers and stockpiling food, which instantly surprised the knight standing nearby. Another administrator added that they desperately needed the funds because the Forest of Beasts garrison was partially destroyed during the last battle against the orcs. Rebuilding it was already difficult enough, and reducing the Night Order's forces would only barely give them some breathing room, while creating even more risks in the long run. Meanwhile, Ghislain quietly watched the argument unfold like it was just another normal day in the castle. The knight standing in front of him was the knight captain, Randolph. The heavily bearded man was the treasurer, Albert, while the general administrator leading most of the discussion was Homern. Looking around the room, Ghislain found himself wondering how long it had been since he last saw his father as the young Lord of Peridium. In reality, only a few months had passed. But for someone who lived decades as the mercenary king, it honestly felt way longer than that. Ghislain suddenly greeted his father and welcomed him home, which immediately made the Count feel awkward because his son normally never acted like this. The Count's name was Zwalter Peridium. Back when Ghislain was younger, he used to dislike his father for always being overly strict and serious, like the man forgot happiness existed. But now things felt different. Ghislain could finally see the exhaustion and pressure weighing on his father's shoulders. He understood what it truly meant to Kory, the responsibilities of ruling an entire territory. Zwalter calmly took a sip of tea and mentioned hearing that Ghislain left the castle for an entire week. Ghislain replied that he visited the Rayfold family, and his father immediately asked if he caused any trouble there. Without hesitation, our boy lied straight to his face and claimed he did not. Albert then turned toward Ghislain with a serious expression and mentioned hearing rumors that he defeated Cain in a duel and won money from it. Honestly, the man looked like he still couldn't believe that part. He straight up asked if Ghislain went to Rayfold just to gamble again. That instantly annoyed Ghislain because, in his mind, he did not go there to gamble. He went there to invest. He explained that he actually had business dealings with Amelia instead. Homern then reminded Ghislain that he needed to think carefully before acting, because one day he would inherit Peridium itself. Looking completely unbothered, Ghislain casually replied that he understood and told him not to worry about it. That answer only made Homern even more frustrated because it felt like the kid was politely ignoring every warning thrown at him. The Count eventually placed his teacup down and told everyone to stop arguing before mentioning that he heard Ghislain caused some good trouble during his trip. Ghislain looked confused hearing that. Zwalter then asked if it was true that he executed Jamal and Philip after they tried to sell Elena away. Ghislain was surprised his father was even talking about those worthless knights. Before he could answer properly, Randolph immediately stepped in and claimed it was impossible for Ghislain to kill both knights alone. According to him, the two probably fought each other first. The story got exaggerated afterward, and Ghislain only delivered the final blow at the end. Ghislain quickly realized why Randolph sounded irritated, despite the dead men being traitors. The real issue was the fact that knights died by Ghislain's hand, and the captain clearly didn't like that at all. Not wanting unnecessary trouble, Ghislain simply went along with Randolph's version of the story. Randolph then showed an arrogant smile and proudly declared that he knew it all along. Then, completely unexpectedly, The Count praised Ghislain for doing a good job. That single sentence genuinely shocked him. Zwalter explained that he did not care how his son dealt with those men. The important thing was that Elena survived safely. For Ghislain, this was actually the first compliment he had ever received from his father. After a brief pause, Ghislain told his father that he wanted to ask for permission regarding something. Zwalter looked surprised, but before Ghislain could continue, Homern immediately warned him to stop if he was about to ask for money again. Randolph instantly agreed and started reminding Ghislain about all the problems he caused in the past. With visible irritation on his face, the knight captain listed everything one by one. Ghislain apparently sold military provisions to get gambling money, set the front gate on fire just to grill an army horse, and even melted armor to forge some worthless legendary sword. Honestly, old Ghislain sounded like a walking disaster with noble status. Ghislain couldn't even argue back because, although he personally didn't remember doing those things, he knew the original owner of this body absolutely did. So instead, he calmly explained that he wasn't asking for money and only wanted permission. The Count then asked what exactly he needed permission for, and Ghislain confidently revealed that he wanted to pioneer the Forest of Beasts. The moment those words came out, everyone in the room froze in shock. The scene then shifts to our boy's room where Ghislain revealed that his father completely denied his request and even freaked out before yelling at him. Belinda honestly was not surprised at all hearing this. She told her master that this outcome was expected because the Forest of Beasts was literally filled with monsters. According to her, there was absolutely nothing to gain from going there and risking everyone's lives just to deal with a bunch of nightmare creatures. Ghislain then asked Gillian whether Belinda already explained the plan to him. Gillian confirmed that she did, and explained that Ghislain planned to pioneer the Forest of Beasts using the funds he received from Amelia. He then reminded his master that the forest was basically known as a forest of death where nobody returned alive from. Because of that, almost nothing was known about the place, and people from every region avoided it like the plague. Its reputation was already infamous, even outside Peridium. With a small smile on his face, Ghislain told Gillian that he was already fully aware of how dangerous the forest was. In fact, he admitted there was technically nothing to gain from entering it. Then he casually stood up and started walking toward the door, while telling Gillian that they needed to get moving already. Belinda immediately reminded him that the Count never gave him permission to proceed with this plan, and asked if he seriously intended to continue anyway. Ghislain turned around and calmly explained that he never actually needed his father's permission in the first place. He only asked out of courtesy. According to him, this was something he absolutely had to do. Belinda still could not understand why her master was being so stubborn about this forest, and finally asked him directly what exactly was hidden there that made him so obsessed with it. Ghislain simply told her that he would explain later, because revealing it now would become a massive headache if word spread around. The truth was that if he successfully pioneered the Forest of Beasts, the profits would be insane. Near the forest entrance, there was a massive runestone vein buried underground. When ore became infused with mana, it created runestones, an incredibly rare mineral that mages practically worshipped like treasure dropped from heaven. Runestones were used in barriers, magic circles, scrolls, alchemy, magical research, and basically anything related to mana. In his previous life, Duke Delphine was the one who discovered the vein, but this time only Ghislain possessed that information. Belinda eventually gave up trying to figure out her master's intentions because she could tell he already had a proper plan in mind. Gillian then stated that he would follow Ghislain's orders regardless. Ghislain immediately told Belinda to head to the nearby guild and hire mercenaries, saying that around 200 men should be enough. Hearing that number almost made Belinda lose it, because her master was spending the money he nearly died to obtain like it was pocket change. Gillian also looked concerned, and asked if he was really certain about this. He explained that mercenaries were rough, unruly people who were difficult to control once gathered in large groups. If things turned bad, they might even betray their employer and steal everything for themselves. Ghislain agreed with him and admitted he was absolutely right, which somehow made the conversation even less reassuring. He then explained that the two of them would personally handpick the useful mercenaries themselves. Confused, Gillian asked what exactly he meant by that, and Ghislain revealed that they were heading to recruit the most skilled small-scale mercenary group in the north. The moment Gillian realized who he was talking about, his face immediately became nervous. He asked if Ghislain was referring to the Crazy Dogs. According to him, the group was undeniably skilled, but they were also infamous for betraying employers. The second thing started going badly. The Crazy Dogs were better known as the Cerberus mercenaries. With a confident grin on his face, Ghislain told Gillian that it was time for them to go put a leash on those crazy dogs. The scene then shifts as Gillian guided his master's horse while the two of them walked up a hill toward the outskirts of the Zimbar territory where the Cerberus mercenaries were stationed. One of the mercenaries spotted Ghislain and Gillian approaching from afar through a monocular and immediately informed the others that their visitors had arrived. Another mercenary laughed after hearing this and referred to Ghislain as some poor soul who had no idea what he was walking into. But after taking another closer look through the spyglass, the man realized Ghislain was actually a noble, and suddenly the entire thing started looking like free money to him. Unfortunately for him, while he was busy staring through the monocular, someone suddenly grabbed him by the head. The man screamed in pain so loudly that the entire camp turned toward him in shock. Jillian was the one holding him, casually lifting the guy with one hand like he weighed absolutely nothing. The mercenary cursed at him and demanded to know what the hell he was doing, but Jillian simply threw him with so much force that the upper half of his body got buried straight into the sand. The mercenaries instantly got angry, seeing their comrade folded into the ground like a broken tent pole, and began yelling at Jillian, asking if he had lost his mind. One mercenary then stepped forward from the crowd holding a chain with a hooked spiked ball attached to it. Smiling confidently, he warned Gillian not to act recklessly just because he worked for a noble family, and basically implied they were not leaving this place alive. Sadly, this genius had no idea who he was threatening. Right as the man was talking, he noticed someone else entering the camp. Ghislain had arrived on horseback and immediately told him to shut up and bring out the captain. The mercenary burst into laughter hearing that and began spinning the chain around while calling Ghislain a crazy, noble brat. According to him, it was time for Ghislain to learn what taking responsibility really meant. The second he finished talking, he hurled the spiked chain straight toward our boy. But before the weapon could even touch Ghislain, something slammed into it and completely stopped its movement. Gillian had intercepted it using only a dagger. He jammed the blade right into part of the chain itself, shocking the mercenary because this man had literally stabbed a moving chain mid-air like it was nothing. The spiked ball dropped harmlessly onto the ground while Ghislain simply smiled, because he already knew words alone were never going to work on these people. Ghislain then casually told Jillian to beat them up just enough so nobody died. Gillian grabbed the chain while taking his stance and calmly replied that he understood. He suddenly yanked the chain toward himself, instantly dragging the mercenary directly in front of him without any resistance. The moment the guy got close enough, Jillian swung the spiked ball straight into his stomach. The mercenary let out a painful scream, while the others immediately lost their tempers and charged at Jillian while shouting insults at him. Jillian calmly twisted his dagger around the chain, before lifting the injured mercenary up with it, like some human wrecking ball. Then he threw the man directly at the charging mercenaries, sending them crashing sideways in a pile. The remaining mercenaries froze after seeing that display, and when Jillian slowly turned toward them and glared, the men genuinely looked terrified. One look from him was enough to make the camp atmosphere go from rough mercenary group to everyone suddenly reconsidering their life choices. Ghislain then climbed down from his horse and casually asked how long they planned on making him wait. He told them to go bring their captain already. The moment he finished speaking, another voice suddenly entered the scene saying that he had simply been sleeping and wanted to know what all the noise was about. The mercenaries instantly moved aside and lined themselves up properly the moment they saw the newcomer. The red-haired man then introduced himself as Kaor, the captain of the Cerberus mercenaries, and asked why they were looking for him. Ghislain honestly thought that was a dumb question because there was only one reason people searched for mercenary groups in the first place. He explained that he came to entrust them with a request. Kaor looked surprised hearing this and immediately questioned why a client would beat up his subordinates first before introducing himself. He even commented that nobles were supposed to know basic manners. Ghislain simply smiled and told him that this was his own style of greeting. According to him, it was also the best way to properly tame them. Kaor laughed after hearing that and admitted he could not even imagine what would happen if Ghislain greeted them twice. Then he finally agreed to hear the request first. The scene then shifts to Kaor's tent, where everyone had gathered around while Ghislain sat across the table from the captain himself. Kaor asked him to finally explain what kind of request he came here for, and Ghislain straightforwardly revealed that he wanted to hire the Cerberus mercenaries to pioneer the forest of beasts. The mercenaries standing behind Kaor instantly looked shocked hearing that because they knew exactly what kind of hellhole that forest was. It was located near the Peridium territory and was infamous for swallowing people alive without leaving traces behind. Kaor smiled after hearing the request and asked Ghislain what kind of person he had to be to willingly disturb a forest filled with monsters like that. Ghislain then calmly introduced himself as the young lord of Peridium. The second Kaor and his men heard that, they burst out laughing. They immediately realized this was the insane young noble everyone kept talking about in the rumors. At that point, they became fully convinced the guy had completely lost his mind. Kaor told Ghislain that he clearly had no idea what the Forest of Beasts was truly like because he grew up sheltered like some greenhouse flower. According to him, that place was not somewhere rookies like Ghislain could survive. The captain then lost interest in continuing the conversation entirely and signaled his men that the negotiations were over. The mercenaries immediately raised their weapons while Jillian responded by lifting his axe without hesitation. But instead of backing down, Ghislain suddenly asked Kaor if he was scared. That immediately caught everyone off guard. With a calm smile on his face, Ghislain admitted he was honestly disappointed because he heard the Cerberus mercenaries were supposed to be skilled. According to him, it sounded like the reputation was just a big hoax. Kaor instantly looked annoyed hearing that. He casually placed one leg on the table and warned Ghislain not to mess with him. He reminded him that mercenaries only accepted jobs that were worth the payoff and had no reason to throw their lives away. Ghislain casually responded that weaklings usually loved making excuses, which somehow made the atmosphere inside the tent even worse. Kaor told him the mood was already ruined and accused Ghislain of throwing around cheap provocations like some clueless brat trying too hard to act tough. According to him, Ghislain was not even worth killing. Still, he generously decided to let him leave alive as long as he paid compensation for the trouble trouble he caused and disappeared from the camp. Ghislain calmly rejected that idea immediately. Then, with a serious expression, he requested Amoriana's recognition with Kaor, the captain of the Cerberus mercenaries. The moment those words came out, both Gillian and the mercenaries looked genuinely shocked. Kaor stared at him and asked if he even understood what that challenge actually meant. Still smiling confidently, Ghislain replied that he did. Moriana's recognition was a traditional betting match passed down among mercenaries. Once two people agreed to it, they fought using only a single dagger, without relying on mana at all. One arm from each participant would be tied together, and stepping outside the small fighting circle counted as an immediate loss. Basically, it forced both fighters into an insanely brutal close-range deathmatch with almost no room to move. In many cases, even the winner ended up dying afterward. Honestly, mercenaries really invented the least healthy ways possible to settle arguments. Ghislain then explained the final condition to Kaor. The loser had to openly admit defeat and obey the winner's words completely. In simple terms, the loser became the winner's dog. He then asked Kaor how he felt about the bet. Meanwhile, Gillian could not stop wondering why a noble like Ghislain even knew about such a filthy mercenary tradition in the first place. In the mercenary world, refusing Amoriana's recognition was basically the same as admitting weakness in front of everyone, which meant it was a challenge that could never truly be declined. Kaor suddenly burst into loud laughter like a complete madman before showing a creepy grin on his face. He then told his subordinates that they apparently had a bold little noble who wanted recognition the mercenary way. According to him, they should all help the kid out a little. The mercenaries immediately started laughing after hearing that, clearly thinking Ghislain had just signed his own death warrant. Once again, it was time for one of our boys' ridiculous showdowns, so everybody better buckle up, guys. Ghislain and Kaor stepped into the circle and tied one of their arms together according to the rules of Moriana's recognition. Both of them were handed daggers while Kaor casually removed his jacket like this was just another fun afternoon activity for him. The surrounding mercenaries immediately started cheering for their captain and loudly told him to kill the arrogant noble already. Kaor looked completely relaxed as he told Ghislain that he must have heard about this challenge somewhere and foolishly decided to try it himself. He warned him that there was no backing out anymore. Then, with a confident grin, Kaor suddenly yanked Ghislain toward him, using their tied arms, and proudly revealed that he had participated in this kind of duel 5 times already. But Ghislain calmly returned to his original position, before pulling Kaor toward himself with an even more condescending expression. Then he casually revealed that he had gone through Moriana's recognition more than 100 times. Hearing that instantly shocked Kaor because there was no way a normal person would even survive enough opportunities to experience something this insane that many times. Most people never even saw one in their entire life. The duel officially began, and both men immediately rushed at each other with daggers drawn. Their blades flashed as they repeatedly attacked and dodged within the tiny circle. Both of them barely avoided getting stabbed multiple times, while constantly swinging at one another in brutal close-range combat. Ghislain started attacking with even more force, but Kaor managed to block the strikes before suddenly pulling him closer and attempting to stab him from behind. Even though Ghislain could barely track the blade properly, he still managed to tilt his head at the last second and avoid the attack before instantly countering. Kaor dodged the counterattack and pulled him in again before driving a heavy kick into Ghislain's leg. The impact was strong enough for Ghislain to immediately feel the damage spreading through it. Kaor smiled after seeing that reaction and admitted Ghislain was performing better than expected. Still, he clearly did not believe the story about him surviving over 100 Moriana's recognitions, because that sounded completely absurd. Kaor then rushed him again while telling him to at least make his bluffs believable. This time, he attacked non-stop without giving Ghislain any opening to retaliate. The Cerberus mercenaries loved what they were seeing and loudly cheered for Kaor to kill Ghislain for disrespecting them. But the moment Gillian glared at the group, the entire crowd suddenly quieted down. Nobody there wanted problems with that monster either. Gillian, meanwhile, could already tell this fight heavily favored Kaor. The fighting circle itself was so small that it barely had enough room for one person to lie down properly. Since the rules completely banned mana and force enhancement, everything depended purely on physical ability. On top of that, Kaor had the advantage in size and strength, while the tied arms severely limited movement. Ghislain could barely dodge or properly block attacks, while Kaor constantly controlled the pace of the fight. Realizing how dangerous things were becoming, Gillian slowly rested his hand on his axe and prepared himself to interfere if the situation became truly bad. During the clash, Kaor suddenly grabbed Ghislain's arm and forced him down before swinging the dagger toward him. Ghislain barely managed to jump aside to avoid the strike and landed on the opposite side of the circle. But the moment he landed, he noticed pain surging through his leg. The injury came from the earlier kick he blocked from Kaor. Since mana protection was forbidden, every hit directly damaged the body, and the accumulated pain only kept getting worse over time. Kaor immediately noticed the change in Ghislain's expression and grinned widely. He mocked him for looking pale, and asked if he had already reached his limit. Then he started attacking even more aggressively. To Kaor, Ghislain looked pathetic, struggling against his raw strength, though he still admitted internally that the young lord had more guts than most nobles he had met before. Even so, Kaor remained convinced that Ghislain lacked real skill. In his eyes, he had already figured out Ghislain's strategy completely. He believed Ghislain was trying to deflect dagger strikes with his weapon, while intentionally absorbing less dangerous hits with his own body to minimize fatal damage. But Moriana's recognition was a fight without mana, meaning every injury stacked endlessly until the body eventually gave out. Kaor could already tell Ghislain was beginning to feel the pressure building in his legs, and the strain was clearly showing on his face. Seeing that only made the mercenary smile even wider because, for someone like him, watching his opponent slowly struggle for survival was the most entertaining part of the entire fight. Kaor suddenly spun his dagger and rushed straight at Ghislain again. Our boy barely managed to block the strike before Kaor instantly closed the distance and slashed toward his head. Ghislain bent low to dodge it and immediately tried counterattacking from below, but Kaor blocked that too before dragging their tied arms sideways and pinning him down. Then he slammed another kick into Ghislain using the same injured leg from earlier. The pain instantly shot through our boy's body, and the expression on his face made it obvious the damage was stacking up badly. Seeing that reaction, Kaor became convinced the fight was already over. He raised his dagger and straight up told Ghislain to die already, while his mercenaries exploded in excitement watching the scene. Even Jillian finally pulled out his axe because he was fully prepared to rescue his master if things got worse. But then Ghislain smiled. At the exact moment Kaor brought the dagger down, Ghislain suddenly lowered himself even further and dodged from an angle that honestly looked impossible. Kaor was completely caught off guard by the movement. Ghislain instantly pushed himself sideways and sliced Kaor near the ribs. The captain looked genuinely shocked, while both the mercenaries and Gillian stared in disbelief after seeing their boss get wounded. Kaor immediately charged back in anger, but Ghislain smoothly lowered his body again and carved another cut across the captain's chest while moving underneath him. The mercenaries could not believe their captain got hit twice in a row after dominating the fight earlier through sheer strength. They loudly told Kaor to stop messing around and show the noble what a real mercenary was made of. Meanwhile, Gillian was finally beginning to understand what Ghislain was doing. Kaor then swung his dagger at Ghislain's head again, but Ghislain dodged low once more before suddenly driving his shoulder directly into Kaor's face as he rose back up. Then, while still gripping the dagger tightly, he landed several punches on the captain before twisting the blade and stabbing Kaor through the forearm. Shockingly, Kaor did not even scream. The guy just got angrier and attacked even more fiercely. But now Ghislain was dodging his attacks far more easily. Kaor could not understand what had changed, because only moments earlier, the kid was struggling to survive against his strength. Kaor kept overpowering his opponent through brute force, but every heavy movement also stiffened his muscles and reduced his flexibility. Instead of resisting that power directly, Ghislain kept redirecting the momentum while staying relaxed and fluid. He was basically using Kaor's own strength to create openings for himself. Jillian honestly never expected his master to overcome the physical disadvantage this way, so he quietly put his axe back down. Meanwhile, his own breathing was getting heavier, while Ghislain continued moving around him smoothly. The mercenaries started shouting at Kaor from the sidelines, asking why he was still playing around because nobody was laughing anymore. Ghislain actually complimented Kaor's determination at this point, and admitted that most people cornered in Moriana's recognition would have broken the rules and secretly used mana already. Kaor smiled hearing that, and admitted Ghislain really talked like someone who survived this challenge over 100 times. He then revealed that he himself earned the position of captain through Moriana's recognition, and explained that mercenaries who broke rules like this usually did not survive long in their line of work. Ghislain smiled hearing that, and admitted he liked Kaor's spirit. Still, Kaor acknowledged that he was now at a disadvantage in a direct fight, but according to him, victory in Moriana's recognition was not limited to overpowering someone physically. Since stepping outside, the circle counted as an automatic loss, there were other ways to win. Suddenly, Kaor grabbed Ghislain and lifted him upward. His plan was simple. If he could throw Ghislain completely outside the circle, the match would instantly end in his favor. But before Ghislain's body could touch the ground outside the boundary, he suddenly tightened his grip on Kaor's arm and bent his legs to stop himself from falling. He literally used Kaor's own body as support. Then he pulled the captain forward unexpectedly. Kaor never saw it coming. Ghislain instantly climbed up using Kaor's body, wrapped an arm around his neck from behind, and slammed the captain's head directly into the ground. Kaor's head crossed outside the circle first. The mercenaries were completely stunned. Kaor looked furious, realizing he had actually lost, while Ghislain calmly smiled and informed him that the match was over. Kaor turned toward him and demanded to know his real identity, because there was no way someone this skilled was actually just some spoiled noble. Ghislain responded with a cold stare, and admitted he did not like Kaor's attitude. Then he reminded him that he was speaking to his new master now. Ghislain pulled Kaor back up, while the red-haired mercenary asked what more he wanted, since the duel was already finished. But Ghislain calmly told him that the fight was not over yet, because technically he himself had not stepped outside the circle. Kaor immediately realized where this was going. Ghislain clenched his fist and announced that he was now going to discipline his subordinate before punching Kaor straight in the face hard enough to knock him down. Kaor hurriedly protested and reminded him that the match officially ended once someone stepped outside the circle. Ghislain responded by punching him again and asked if Kaor planned on following neat little rules during an actual battlefield fight too. Kaor angrily called him a bastard and complained that nobles were not supposed to act this way. Ghislain coldly told him not to talk back to his master before punching him again. Kaor then called him a lunatic, which honestly only made things worse because Ghislain kept beating him non-stop afterward. Punch after punch landed on Kaor's face until Ghislain's hand became covered in blood. The surrounding mercenaries were getting increasingly furious because they genuinely thought their captain would simply be spared after losing the bet. Eventually, Kaor himself started begging Ghislain to stop, but Ghislain grabbed him by the collar with an icy expression and calmly reminded him once again that he still had not stepped outside the circle yet. At that moment, Kaor looked completely horrified. His face was swollen beyond recognition as he desperately turned toward his subordinates and begged them to kill Ghislain already. The mercenaries instantly drew their swords and moved forward, but before they could get close, Jillian stepped in and pulled out his axe again. The entire group stopped moving immediately. With an absolutely terrifying tone, Jillian warned them that anyone interfering with his master's disciplinary actions would die on the spot. Everybody there knew he was not bluffing. Kaor stared at the scene in disbelief before slowly turning back toward Ghislain while trembling like a terrified dog. Ghislain then calmly asked him if he was finally done now. The next thing Kaor saw was Ghislain's fist flying straight toward his face again. At this point, the captain actually started laughing out of pure fear because he finally realized he seriously messed up. The punch sent him stumbling backward, while his thoughts raced through every noble he had dealt with before. In Kaor's experience, nobles were always the same: overconfident pigs, selfish traitors, narcissists who folded the moment someone intimidated them properly. Scaring them a little was usually enough to empty their pockets, and thanks to treating nobles that way for years, Kaor earned the title of the Mad Dog. But now the so-called Mad Dog was getting beaten into submission by a young noble brat he originally did not even take seriously. The surrounding mercenaries became increasingly worried, seeing the terrible state their captain was in, but unfortunately, none of them dared to interfere anymore. Meanwhile, Ghislain calmly examined Kaor's battered body and wondered if he had disciplined him enough already. Then, completely casually, he ordered the mercenaries to stop standing around uselessly and bring water, bandages, and towels immediately. The men looked genuinely confused hearing that. Ghislain then bluntly informed them that their captain would actually die soon if they did not hurry up and treat him properly. That instantly shocked the mercenaries into action, and they immediately obeyed his orders without arguing. Jillian quietly watched the entire scene unfold and noticed something important. These rough, unruly mercenaries, who only respected strength, were now naturally listening to Ghislain's commands. In the mercenary world, where fists mattered more than laws, Ghislain had firmly carved his position into their minds using the simplest and most effective method possible. He showed them exactly who the boss was. Sometime later, Kaor could be seen sitting on a chair completely wrapped in bandages while looking like someone who barely survived a Kaor-Iaj accident. Ghislain then calmly placed a contract on the table and told him to sign it. Kaor silently stared at him for a moment because he already understood he no longer had any choice in the matter. So he slowly picked up the pen and signed the paper before weakly telling Ghislain to take it. Unfortunately for him, that wording immediately made Ghislain stare at him with a terrifying expression and ask him to repeat what he just said. Kaor instantly became nervous again. With a shaky voice, he corrected himself and properly told Ghislain that he looked forward to working with him from now on. Only then did Ghislain finally grab his hand. Honestly, Kaor looked more scared during the handshake than during half the fight itself. Ghislain then smiled and told him that they were family now, and that he also looked forward to working together. A few days later, the scene shifts to the outskirts of the Peridium territory, where a large group of mercenaries had gathered early in the morning. One of the men yawned while asking if anyone even knew why they were called there this early. A bald mercenary Kaor yielding a shield revealed that he heard rumors their employer was actually the young Lord of Peridium himself. Hearing that instantly surprised the others. One mercenary scoffed and called Ghislain nothing more than a brat who probably had no idea how to properly handle mercenaries. According to him, this job might end up being incredibly easy. Right then, a huge shirtless man suddenly clapped his hands loudly to grab everyone's attention. The massive guy declared that the group needed a representative to deal with their bratty employer properly. The other mercenaries instantly recognized him and called him Gordon the Muscle. Smiling proudly, Gordon confirmed that was indeed him. He then complimented the mercenaries for their admirable discussion about how to earn rewards without working too hard. Honestly, the man sounded weirdly inspirational while talking about laziness. Gordon explained that if they truly wanted good results, they needed to unite their voices together instead of acting individually. The mercenaries quickly agreed because one of them remembered a previous job where a single idiot made unreasonable demands and ruined everything for everybody. The bald mercenary then asked Gordon what exactly he planned to do. Gordon casually opened a bag filled with coins and explained that, as the group representative, he would personally pressure their employer into giving them better conditions. Naturally, Such difficult work deserved compensation. He then asked the others to contribute money into the bag for his hard work. The mercenaries honestly thought Gordon was perfect for the role. The guy was huge enough to intimidate almost anyone, and they praised him for being surprisingly clever at making money, despite looking like someone who only lifted rocks all day. One after another, they happily tossed coins into the bag, but before things could continue, one mercenary suddenly noticed someone approaching from the distance. Everyone immediately raised their heads and saw Ghislain riding toward them alone on horseback. The men looked shocked seeing him arrive by himself. One mercenary joked that the young lord might run away the second he saw Gordon's muscles. Gordon confidently told the others to stand closer together because it would help create a more intimidating atmosphere. Smiling proudly, he declared that it was finally time to teach some spoiled noble brat how terrifying the real world could be. Unfortunately for him, the situation suddenly changed. Just as Gordon prepared to approach Ghislain, he noticed additional figures moving in from behind him. It was Jillian alongside the Cerberus mercenaries. One of the mercenaries immediately recognized the dog's snout-shaped helmets and nervously revealed that those men were the Cerberus mercenaries. The mood instantly shifted. Gordon looked completely shocked, because everyone knew the Cerberus mercenaries were basically a pack of certified lunatics. He genuinely could not understand how Ghislain managed to make the crazy dogs obey him in the first place. As Ghislain finally approached the group, the mercenaries unconsciously stepped backward to make space for him. Ghislain then looked directly at Gordon and calmly asked whether he was the representative. With a noticeably nervous expression now replacing all his earlier confidence, Gordon admitted that he was. Ghislain then asked for his name, and the man introduced himself as Gordon the Muscle. Our boy immediately commented that it was a pretty unique name, before casually tapping Gordon's chest and telling him it sounded cool. Then Ghislain introduced himself properly as the young lord of Peridium and ordered Gordon to gather all the mercenaries together. Once everyone assembled, Ghislain's expression turned serious as he officially announced that they were about to begin the pioneering of the Forest of Beasts. In the next scene, Belinda was helping Ghislain put on his armor, while the final preparations for pioneering the Forest of Beasts were being completed. Everything was already ready by this point. The temporary expedition base had been constructed, resources were secured, and most importantly, Ghislain successfully gathered the troops he needed. After getting fully equipped, Ghislain asked Belinda to do one final head count just to make sure everything was correct. Belinda accepted immediately, and reported that there were 148 mercenaries hired through the guild office, along with 41 Cerberus mercenaries personally brought by Ghislain. In total, they had gathered 192 people for the expedition. Ghislain praised her for the good work before asking if she properly informed Scovan about everything. Belinda confirmed that she had. Honestly, she originally expected Scovan to try stopping them from entering the Forest of Beasts entirely, but instead he actually made sure they would not get detected while entering the forest. Because of that, Belinda believed they probably would not run into any issues from the outside. She told her master not to worry about him. Hearing that made Ghislain smile because he found the news reassuring. Soon afterward, Ghislain called out to the gathered mercenaries and ordered everyone to line up properly. Once the group settled down, he addressed them seriously and announced that the land they were about to pioneer lay directly ahead of them. He assumed everyone already heard the rumors surrounding the Forest of Beasts, and explained that the place was filled with unknown dangers. According to him, terrifying monsters, unseen threats, and things beyond their imagination were lurking inside that forest. Despite all of that, he declared that he still intended to conquer it. The moment the mercenaries realized their destination was actually the Forest of Beasts, the crowd instantly became restless. Some of them complained that nobody told them they would be entering that death trap. Others openly admitted they could lose their lives in there. Before the complaints could grow louder, Belinda immediately stepped in and told them not to interrupt her master while he was speaking. Ghislain then calmly told anyone who wished to withdraw that they could leave right now without consequences. But right after that, he casually dropped another bombshell by promising to pay everyone 3 times their current wages if the mission succeeded. That instantly shocked the mercenaries. The offer was honestly tempting enough to make people forget common sense for a second. Even Belinda quickly moved beside Ghislain and whispered to him, asking why he was suddenly spouting nonsense like that. She reminded him they already burned through nearly all their funds during the preparations alone. Ghislain calmly explained that this was simply how you boost morale properly. The truth was that he already knew the mission would eventually make enough money to pay everyone several times over, while still leaving plenty behind for himself. Then he turned toward Belinda and asked if she trusted him. Belinda sighed and admitted she really did not have much choice besides trusting him at this point. Nearby, Kaor quietly commented to Jillian that their master had to be insane for offering triple pay like that. He honestly could not understand how Ghislain planned to fulfill such a ridiculous promise. Still, he admitted the young lord definitely had guts. Jillian calmly replied that Ghislain was the kind of man who always had a plan prepared. Finally, Ghislain officially referred to the gathered troops as the Forest of Beasts expedition team and gave the order for everyone to move out. Sometime later, The expedition team could be seen deep inside the forest of beasts, cutting down trees to clear a path forward. Everyone was busy working, and surprisingly, even Ghislain himself was helping with the labor, instead of standing around giving orders like a typical noble. After chopping down another tree in front of him, Ghislain looked upward in relief after noticing the forest had opened up a little and sunlight was finally starting to pass through the thick canopy. He immediately raised his hand and ordered the men to continue clearing the path in the direction he pointed toward. The trees were to be cut down, chopped into logs, and loaded onto Kaor's carriage. Those without direct tasks were instructed to dig around the stumps, so uprooting the trees would become easier. According to the Forest of Beasts development journal that Ghislain obtained during his previous life, this forest was absurdly massive. Eventually, humanity would drive away the monsters and fully exploit all the resources hidden inside it. But right now, Ghislain only cared about one thing: money. He needed to ignore everything else and secure the fastest route toward the runestone vein, because the wealth gained from this expedition would become a huge advantage in stopping the conspiracy surrounding Peridium. Meanwhile, Kaor found it strange that their employer was personally helping with physical labor. One mercenary claimed Ghislain was simply trying to show off noble dignity, while another man wearing a helmet argued that the young lord was obviously pretending and would probably give up soon enough. Before the gossip could continue, Belinda immediately told the mercenaries to stop chattering and get back to work. The men quickly returned to cutting trees, while Belinda moved closer to Ghislain, looking annoyed. She reminded him that he went through so much effort to hire all these mercenaries in the first place, so she did not understand why he was personally doing labor alongside them. According to her, the men were starting to take him lightly because he was working at the same level as everyone else. Ghislain simply replied that it did not matter. More hands meant faster progress, and he believed nothing good would happen if they stayed inside this forest for too long. Belinda eventually accepted the explanation, though she pointed out that he talked like someone who already knew exactly what was waiting ahead of them. Nearby, Kaor watched Ghislain and Belinda talking, and could not help smiling bitterly. He honestly found it ridiculous that his employer had a woman worrying about him while he himself had somehow become the noble's dog and was now voluntarily marching straight into hell with his own feet. The moment Gillian heard that, he smacked Kaor with a log. Kaor immediately shouted back and asked whether Gillian was trying to start a fight, while Ghislain and Belinda glanced toward the commotion. So far, however, everything was proceeding smoothly. Back in his previous life, Ghislain learned that after Duke Delphine conquered the kingdom and established a new dynasty, the duchy eventually launched a massive development project inside the Forest of Beasts. Although Ghislain never discovered why the Duke specifically chose this dangerous place, he did manage to obtain a development journal containing important information about resource locations and monster ecosystems. Thanks to that journal, he was able to enter the forest somewhat prepared. Meanwhile, one mercenary started wondering why Ghislain brought hundreds of oil lamps with them, because normal torches would have been far cheaper if they only needed light during the night. Despite the expedition progressing without issues, Ghislain actually felt uneasy. Everything he knew about this place came from records and journals. He had never personally experienced these events himself. Because of that, he repeatedly warned the men not to lower their guard as they continued moving deeper into the forest. As the mercenaries kept cutting trees, one of them suddenly noticed the surroundings becoming strangely dark and wondered if night had already arrived. Another mercenary pointed out that they still had not encountered even a single monster, despite all the terrifying stories surrounding the forest. The man beside him agreed, saying the place honestly did not seem as dangerous as everyone claimed. Then one bald mercenary confidently declared that the rumors were probably fake from the start. According to him, the expedition would have been easy, even if Gordon had done absolutely nothing. Right after saying that, suddenly Gordon noticed something strange. He reminded everyone they already cut countless trees behind them. The mercenaries agreed and said they definitely cleared the path earlier. Gordon slowly turned around and asked why the road was blocked again. Right in front of him stood a massive sky-touching tree. The mercenaries froze after seeing the giant tree appear out of nowhere. Ghislain immediately called out to everyone and ordered them to stay alert. The troops quickly grabbed their weapons and prepared themselves. The mercenaries who mocked the forest earlier started panicking instantly. They could already feel the atmosphere becoming heavier around them. Ghislain warned Gordon that he would die if he stayed there. He ordered him to slowly walk back toward the group. Gordon nervously accepted the order and started moving backward carefully, but the log he carried suddenly hit another tree behind him. The huge man instantly lost balance and fell onto the ground. The mercenaries quickly took defensive stances and called him an idiot. Gordon hurriedly turned around, expecting an attack to happen, but strangely, nothing happened at all. The mercenaries became confused after seeing the quiet surroundings again. The bald mercenary suddenly started laughing and mocked Ghislain again. He claimed their employer simply scared too easily over nothing important. According to him, the scenery only looked confusing because every tree looked similar. He declared the Forest of Beasts was just an overrated, dense forest. Ghislain seriously warned the man to move closer if he valued his life. The bald mercenary became annoyed hearing another warning from him. He accused Ghislain of creating fake tension to intimidate everybody. The moment he finished speaking, vines suddenly wrapped around his waist. Before the man could even scream properly, the vines dragged him upward instantly. At the top of the giant tree was a horrifying mouth filled with of teeth. The monster swallowed the bald mercenary whole and crushed him brutally inside its jaws. The mercenaries stared at the scene, completely horrified by what they just witnessed. The terrifying thing about the monster was its complete lack of presence. There was no killing intent, and absolutely no warning signs beforehand. People only noticed the creature after already becoming its victim. The giant tree then slowly opened a massive eye and glared directly toward Ghislain. Ghislain immediately recognized the monster as a Deerus Ent. Suddenly, several more Deerus Ents emerged around the entire area. The monsters completely surrounded the expedition team from every direction. Gordon and the other mercenaries instantly lost their composure and started panicking badly. Many of them tried running away while screaming they would all get eaten alive. But before anyone could escape, the monsters launched countless vines toward them. Several mercenaries got caught and thrown directly into the monsters' mouths. The Deerus Ents swallowed them whole without hesitation. Fortunately, Gordon managed to grab a nearby tree before getting dragged away. He desperately screamed for someone to save him. One mercenary rushed toward Gordon while carrying an axe. The man told Gordon to hold on tightly before attacking the vine, but the moment his axe hit the vine, something terrifying happened. Instead of cutting through the vine, his own axe slowly started cracking apart. The mercenary stared at his broken weapon in complete disbelief. While he remained distracted, the monster suddenly pulled Gordon upward again. The huge man screamed in terror while getting dragged toward the giant mouth, but before the Deerus Ent could swallow him, Ghislain suddenly appeared above it. He covered his sword with mana and cut through the vine instantly. While still airborne, he slashed directly into the monster's giant eye. Blood exploded everywhere from the injured eye. The mercenaries looked shocked after seeing Ghislain damage the creature successfully. They immediately assumed the monster's eye was its weakness. Ghislain took a deep breath and screamed loudly at everybody around him. He ordered the mercenaries to pull themselves together immediately. The mercenaries became shocked hearing their employer's commanding voice. Ghislain explained that spreading apart would only make them easier targets. He ordered everybody to raise their shields and form a tight formation. He wanted them defending together so nobody got grabbed by the vines. The mercenaries quickly obeyed his orders and moved into formation. One mercenary desperately shouted he refused to die inside this forest. Ghislain quickly rushed toward the carriage and asked Kaor about the oil lamps. Kaor confirmed the lamps were still there inside the carriage. Ghislain immediately ordered him to light the lamps and throw them. He planned on burning the Deerus Ents down completely. Kaor finally realized why Ghislain brought hundreds of oil lamps earlier. One of Kaor's men suddenly warned him the monsters were watching them already. Ghislain ordered them to throw the lamps immediately without hesitation. Kaor and the Cerberus mercenaries quickly lit the lamps and threw them. Unfortunately, the Deerus Ents used their vines to destroy the lamps midair. The monsters smashed every lamp before they could even reach their targets. Kaor looked shocked after seeing the monsters react that quickly. One mercenary admitted they would never burn the monsters successfully like this. Suddenly, one Deerus Ent launched its vines directly toward their group. Before the attack could reach them, Jillian stepped in front immediately. He destroyed the incoming vines using a powerful swing from his axe. At the same time, Belinda took out several knives from her clothes. She quickly threw the knives directly toward the monster's giant eye. Ghislain quickly ordered Jillian and Belinda to protect the Cerberus mercenaries while they prepared the oil lamps. Then our boy raised his sword and declared he would draw the monster's attention himself. The moment he finished speaking, one Deerus Ent launched its vines toward him immediately. Belinda quickly shouted for her master to watch out. Ghislain swung his sword and cleanly sliced through the incoming vines. The other Deerus Ents instantly shifted their attention toward him and attacked together. Our boy skillfully dodged every attack while moving around the battlefield smoothly. Suddenly, one Deerus Ent raised its massive leg and tried crushing him completely. The mercenaries looked horrified after realizing the giant tree monsters actually had legs. They became convinced their employer was about to get flattened instantly. But Ghislain coated his sword with mana and sliced through the monster's leg before jumping upward and stabbing directly into its eye. The surrounding Deerus Ents completely focused on Ghislain after witnessing the attack. The mercenaries stared in shock, seeing their employer successfully lure all the monsters toward himself. Belinda immediately ordered the Cerberus mercenaries to throw the lamps right now. This time, the mercenaries believed the strategy would finally succeed. They quickly threw the burning oil lamps directly toward the monsters. The Deerus Ents screamed painfully the moment the lamps exploded against their bodies. The Cerberus mercenaries became excited after finally seeing the monsters react properly. Ghislain shouted for everybody to keep throwing lamps without stopping. He ordered them to continue until every single Deerus Ent burned down completely. Flames rapidly spread across the monsters' bodies while the mercenaries stared in disbelief. They honestly could not believe they were successfully fighting back against monsters like these. One mercenary nervously pointed out that the entire forest might burn down at this rate. Gordon tried acting confident again and claimed the Deerus Ents were not that impressive anyway. According to him, trees naturally being weak to fire was completely normal, but Ghislain immediately warned everybody not to lower their guard yet. He seriously informed them the battle was still far from over. The mercenaries became confused hearing this, while Ghislain calmly explained that the monsters were about to reveal their true forms. Suddenly, the Deerus Ents released huge amounts of steam around themselves. The mercenaries became confused and wondered if the flames were already getting extinguished somehow. Belinda and Jillian quickly rushed toward Ghislaine and asked what was happening. Ghislaine explained that the outer shells of the monsters were weak against fire, but their insides were completely different. The flames burning the bark were now reaching the wet flesh underneath, which caused all the steam. When the steam finally cleared, the mercenaries became horrified by what they saw. The monsters no longer looked like giant trees anymore. Their real bodies looked more like horrifying masses of flesh. The Dirus Ents screamed loudly and charged directly toward the expedition team. The mercenaries could not believe the monsters were still alive after burning like that. Ghislaine immediately raised his sword and grabbed everyone's attention. He ordered the mercenaries to raise their weapons because the battle was now entering close quarters combat. Then Ghislaine himself charged straight toward the monsters first. The mercenaries became stunned, seeing their employer rush toward those gigantic creatures without hesitation. Many of them believed they would simply get stomped to death fighting these things directly. But unlike Gordon's group, the Cerberus mercenaries immediately followed Ghislaine into battle enthusiastically. Kaor and his men looked genuinely excited, like they were waiting for this exact moment. Belinda also rushed toward the battlefield while Jillian glared at the hesitating mercenaries. He demanded to know why they were freezing up after receiving direct orders from Ghislaine. Jillian seriously told them to trust their employer. The moment he finished speaking, Ghislaine cut down another Dirus Ent right in front of them. Seeing that finally pushed the mercenaries into action. They decided to trust Ghislaine and follow his lead. Gordon loudly told his teammates to trust their employer too. The mercenaries finally raised their weapons and charged toward the monsters together. Ghislaine then pointed his sword at the Dirus Ents and revealed something important. Since the bark protecting their bodies already burned away, the monsters could now be damaged without mana. He ordered the mercenaries not to fear them anymore because the Dirus Ents were now nothing more than giant target dummies. The mercenaries immediately followed his instructions and attacked the monsters together aggressively. Kaor looked like he was having the time of his life while slaughtering the creatures. Belinda and Jillian also joined the battle and helped eliminate the remaining monsters. The expedition team fought relentlessly against every single Dirus Ent surrounding them. Ghislaine knew hesitation meant death in a place like this. Because of that, he believed his role was removing all fear and hesitation from his followers completely. The moment he thought that Ghislaine stabbed another Dirus Ent directly inside its mouth, then he tore the creature apart using his sword. Our boy wanted his men to believe impossible things could actually be achieved if they kept moving forward. Finally, the last monster collapsed onto the ground. The mercenaries slowly looked around and realized no Dirus Ents remained alive anymore. The men honestly could not believe they survived and defeated every single monster surrounding them. Ghislaine immediately ordered everybody to line up again. The mercenaries quickly obeyed his command without hesitation this time. Then our boy told them to carefully look around at the forest surrounding them. He explained that this was the true reality of the Forest of Beasts. According to him, they were still only standing near the entrance, and the area was already swarming with Dirus Ents. Hearing that instantly made the mercenaries nervous again, but Ghislaine calmly told them not to worry. He assured everybody that he would always stand at the front lines alongside them. Then he turned around, looked directly into their eyes, and asked the mercenaries to trust him and follow his lead. The mercenaries became genuinely shocked hearing those words from an employer, but after everything they witnessed today, they finally accepted him completely and promised they would follow him from now on. As the expedition continued moving deeper into the forest, they encountered countless monsters along the way. Kaor actually looked like he was enjoying the whole situation far too much. The group fought creatures like orcs and strange crystal moles while constantly pushing forward. During every battle, Belinda stayed close and took care of Ghislaine whenever needed. Later, they also encountered some ancient bird-like monsters flying through the forest. The deeper they traveled, the worse the monsters became. Eventually, the group encountered a giant rat monster blocking their path. The mercenaries immediately became nervous, because the monsters simply never stopped appearing. By this point, everybody was already exhausted from non-stop fighting. Before the giant rat could attack, Kaor suddenly rushed forward and sliced off one of its legs. The monster screamed painfully and collapsed toward the mercenaries while opening its giant mouth. The men panicked after seeing the massive creature fall directly toward them. But before the monster could crush anybody, Gillian stepped in front immediately. He used a shield to block the creature's mouth while it struggled violently on the ground. Then Ghislaine climbed onto the monster's body and stabbed directly into its head to finish it off completely. After killing the creature, Ghislaine immediately checked on the mercenaries and asked whether anyone got injured. The men assured him they were all fine while naturally gathering closer around him. One mercenary admitted they could not leave their employer's side anymore if they wanted to survive this forest. Jillian noticed the mercenaries were finally starting to move properly in formation. Kaor explained that real combat always created the best training results. Ghislaine then reminded everybody they still had a long way remaining ahead. He ordered them to continue cutting down trees and clearing the path path deeper into the forest. Meanwhile, one exhausted mercenary watched the others working while breathing heavily. The man honestly believed everybody there had gone completely insane. According to him, they were all trapped inside some crazy forest and still marching deeper willingly. Later that night, the expedition finally arrived near a large lake. The mercenaries instantly became excited after discovering a clean water source. They quickly rushed toward the lake while praising how clear the water looked. But Belinda immediately became cautious, seeing everybody approach the water carelessly. She warned Ghislaine that something dangerous could suddenly emerge from inside the lake. Meanwhile, Ghislaine realized they successfully followed the correct route so far. This lake was actually one of the most important landmarks leading toward the runestone mine. He ordered everybody to set up camp and announced they would finally rest for a while. As night settled, the mercenaries gathered around the camp discussing their situation. One man admitted he still could not believe they already encountered so many monsters despite barely entering the forest. He honestly could not imagine what terrifying things waited deeper inside. Another mercenary admitted they were lucky nothing attacked them during the last 2 nights. Elsewhere in the camp, the exhausted mercenary from earlier gathered Gordon and several other men together secretly. The man named Manus suggested they quietly leave the forest together before things became worse. One mercenary asked Manus to explain himself properly. Manus argued that they no longer needed to risk their lives for money. According to him, survival mattered more than rewards. Gordon reminded him they already traveled deep into the forest, and Ghislaine said their destination was not far anymore. Gordon confidently assured everybody they were almost finished. Manus looked shocked seeing Gordon trust Ghislaine this much. He called Gordon gullible and reminded everybody that Ghislaine was the infamous scoundrel of Peridium. According to Manus, their employer only wanted achievements and fame by pioneering the forest successfully. Then the mercenary with the eye patch suddenly spoke up. He reminded Manus they were already paid and their duty as mercenaries was following their employer's orders properly. Gordon also pointed out that Ghislaine already saved their lives multiple times since entering the forest. Manus admitted Ghislaine was definitely a skilled fighter, but according to him, they were only surviving through luck until now. He reminded everybody that Ghislaine was still human and one mistake could get all of them killed instantly. Then Manus smiled ugly and claimed Ghislaine would eventually use them as meat shields once things became hopeless. According to him, all nobles were exactly the same. The mercenaries slowly became nervous hearing his words. Manus felt satisfied seeing their confidence starting to shake. The truth was, he had no intention of escaping alone. With monsters surrounding the forest, he needed other people to act as bait while he escaped safely. Then the eye-patch mercenary suddenly asked Manus an important question. He asked whether Manus seriously believed they would already be dead without Ghislaine. Manus looked confused hearing that. The eye-patch man then pointed toward Ghislaine nearby and told everybody to watch carefully. At that moment, Ghislaine was personally treating an injured mercenary's wound using expensive medicine. He carefully warned the man not to let water touch the injury because it could become infected. The mercenary sincerely thanked him afterward. After the injured man left, Belinda leaned toward Ghislaine and complained quietly. She reminded him the medicine he was using was extremely expensive and advised him to save it for himself instead. Ghislaine calmly replied that medicine existed to be used properly before calling the next injured mercenary forward. Manus looked genuinely shocked seeing Ghislaine treat common mercenaries this well. The eye-patch mercenary then reminded Manus that the medicine and potions Ghislaine used on them were worth far more than their own lives. He asked Manus whether he seriously believed somebody would waste such expensive supplies just to create meat shields. The other mercenaries slowly started agreeing that Ghislaine was different from normal nobles. They genuinely believed he would never abandon them inside the forest. Manus quietly turned away in frustration. He hated the eye-patch mercenary for ruining his plan completely. He originally wanted to convince several mercenaries to leave together, but now nobody looked willing anymore. A little later, Ghislaine walked over toward Gordon and the others. He casually told them to stop chatting and get proper rest instead. Then he moved toward Gillian and Kaor because he needed to discuss something important. Kaor asked whether Ghislaine truly planned on leaving Manus alone after hearing everything earlier. According to Kaor, he would have already sliced the man's tongue off personally, but Ghislaine calmly assured him it was fine because Manus could not actually do anything dangerous, surrounded by monsters everywhere. Then Ghislaine revealed he currently had something much more important he needed to confirm first. The group quietly moved to an isolated part of the camp away from everyone else. Belinda asked Ghislaine why he suddenly wanted the remaining lamps counted again. Kaor checked the supplies and reported that only 24 lamps remained. Just like Ghislaine expected, several lamps had already gone missing. Ghislaine reminded the group that monsters attacked them day and night ever since entering the forest, but strangely they had not seen a single monster during the last 2 nights. Belinda looked surprised after hearing that pointed out clearly. Kaor asked Ghislaine what exactly that meant, while Gillian quickly understood the situation. He explained they probably entered the territory of a nocturnal monster with massive influence inside the forest. Ghislaine confirmed that Gillian was correct and slowly looked toward the dark forest around them. Then he calmly admitted They were now in real danger. Later that night, Gordon rested alone on several wooden logs while trying to sleep. Suddenly, he noticed a bright light floating in front of him. Gordon quickly opened his eyes and saw the oil lamp hovering strangely in the air. The huge mercenary looked completely confused because lamps were obviously not supposed to fly around by themselves. The moment he moved backward slightly, a horrifying monster with 8 glowing eyes suddenly bit into his shoulder. Gordon instantly screamed and grabbed his mace before wildly swinging it around while yelling at the monster to get away from him. The nearby mercenaries rushed toward him after hearing the scream. They asked Gordon what happened because they could not see anything around him. Gordon desperately insisted that a monster attacked him moments earlier. The mercenaries looked around carefully, but still found absolutely nothing nearby. Some of them started believing Gordon simply had a nightmare because of all the monster battles lately. A few men even joked that his sleepwalking problem was getting worse. Gordon kept trying to explain himself when one Cerberus mercenary suddenly interrupted everyone and admitted Gordon was not lying. According to him, he personally felt a strange presence nearby, and even watched one of the lamps disappear before his eyes. Several other mercenaries immediately agreed with him. One claimed hearing a creepy laugh, while another swore he also witnessed something strange moving through the darkness. The mercenary who mocked Gordon earlier finally became serious after hearing everybody's stories. He admitted there was definitely something hiding around them. Right then, Ghislain suddenly appeared near the group and calmly asked whether they truly saw through the monsters. The mercenaries looked shocked, seeing their employer arrive so suddenly. Ghislain immediately ordered everybody to gather outside his tent for a meeting. A little later, the mercenaries assembled outside Ghislain's tent, while Gordon and the Cerberus mercenary joined the discussion. Gordon became horrified after learning the monsters already surrounded the camp completely. One mercenary wearing a head covering admitted they could not properly see the creatures using normal eyesight. Ghislain explained that invisibility was one of the monsters' natural abilities. He revealed the creatures started following them the moment they reached the lake. According to him, these monsters ruled the nighttime inside the forest of beasts. They were hunters of darkness known as Falores. The creatures could melt directly into darkness, which made them impossible to see properly, while normal physical attacks passed harmlessly through them. Ghislain explained that hundreds of Falores surrounded their prey while slowly stealing every available light source. Their hunting method involved trapping victims inside complete darkness before attacking them helplessly. Gordon and the others became terrified after hearing that hundreds of invisible monsters already surrounded the camp. Belinda finally realized this was the reason their lamps kept disappearing every night. Kaor became annoyed after hearing everything and wondered whether the monsters were simply playing with them before killing them later. He suggested attacking the Falores immediately before the creatures started toying with them further, but Ghislain rejected the idea immediately and explained they needed waiting until the monsters personally attacked first. According to him, that would become the perfect opportunity for a counterattack. Belinda reminded Ghislain they already lost over half their lamps and argued they could not afford waiting around anymore. Ghislain calmly explained reckless attacks would only stimulate the monsters' sadistic instincts. The Falores would retreat briefly, then return later to harass them even worse. More importantly, Ghislain wanted eliminating every single Falores at once, instead of chasing them endlessly through darkness. Jillian looked surprised hearing that, and asked whether such a thing was even possible against hundreds of invisible monsters. Ghislain confidently replied there was definitely a way, and immediately asked Belinda whether she distributed the magic scrolls earlier. Belinda confirmed every mercenary already received one scroll. Ghislain then announced he would explain their strategy carefully, while drawing rough images onto the ground, showing their camp position. He explained that the Falores surrounded the camp from 3 different directions, while slowly tightening the encirclement by stealing lamps. Since the monsters vastly outnumbered them, defending every side equally would be impossible. Ghislain warned they would slowly collapse from the sides if they fought blindly head-on. Jillian quickly added that setting up camp beside the lake prevented the monsters from fully surrounding them. Ghislain confirmed that was exactly why he chose this location. Although the situation looked dangerous, Ghislain assured everybody they actually held the initiative in this fight. The group looked surprised hearing that while Ghislain revealed the full strategy, their forces would split into 3 separate groups. The defenders would block incoming attacks, while the crossbow unit suppressed the monsters from the center. Meanwhile, the elite assault unit, including Ghislain himself, would launch the main offensive attack. The defenders and crossbowmen would gather in the middle and push the Falores backward, while the assault unit concentrated all their firepower from the left side. If the center held long enough, they would completely surround the monsters and secure victory. Jillian quickly understood the strategy, while Gordon nervously questioned whether something like this was realistically possible. Kaor admitted the plan could definitely succeed if the central unit survived long enough. Then Belinda reminded everybody about the biggest problem. Ghislain already explained that physical attacks passed harmlessly through the Falores because they melted into darkness. She asked how exactly they planned fighting invisible monsters immune to normal weapons. Everyone immediately turned toward Ghislain, while Kaor guessed they probably needed using mana against the creatures. But Ghislain calmly smiled and told Belinda not to worry because they already possessed the perfect solution: magic scrolls. Later that night, the defense unit stood in front of the monsters with their shields raised firmly. One mercenary told the others not to break formation, no matter what happened. He reminded everybody to remember the instructions their employer gave them earlier. Another mercenary suddenly announced that the Flores had stolen their final lamp. According to him, something was already coming toward them through the darkness. In the Delphine Pioneer Journal, it was stated that the Flores were extremely vulnerable to bright light. The moment intense light touched them, their true forms would immediately reveal themselves. The second Ghislain remembered this, he raised his magic scroll and tore it apart. He instantly ordered everybody else to do the same. Jillian, Belinda, and the rest of the group immediately followed his command and tore their first circle magic scrolls as well. The spell inside the scrolls was called Light. A massive amount of magical energy shot upward into the sky before exploding into an incredibly bright light that illuminated the entire area. The Flores instantly screamed after the light spread across the forest. The mercenaries looked shocked after seeing the darkness around them getting pushed back completely. They honestly could not believe this disgusting eel-like creatures were the monsters stalking them the entire time. The moment their true forms got exposed, the Flores immediately charged toward the camp. The crossbow unit quickly raised their weapons and prepared themselves. They were ordered to stop the monster's charge and hold the line as long as possible. The mercenaries instantly fired a rain of arrows toward the incoming Flores. At the same time, Ghislain raised his sword and announced that the monster's true forms had finally been revealed. He covered his blade with mana before pointing it directly toward the Flores and ordering the assault unit to charge. The assault team immediately rushed forward and tore through the monsters the moment they reached them. Ghislain swung his massive sword and cut through multiple Flores at once. Although the creatures could assimilate into darkness, their actual physical defense was extremely weak once exposed. Ghislain already knew this unit could easily rip through them once their invisibility disappeared. He ordered everybody to kill as many Flores as possible, while the assault unit pushed ahead aggressively. Jillian absorbed the monster's attacks and kept their attention focused entirely on himself. While he handled the front, Kaor constantly disrupted the monster's movements and formations. Belinda focused on creating openings by throwing knives directly into the monster's heads. The moment she created another opening, she immediately called out to Ghislain. Our boy jumped high into the air and unleashed a huge downward slash the moment he landed. Because of his sword's massive size, his attack carved through a huge group of Flores at once. Meanwhile, the crossbow unit continuously fired arrows at the monsters pushing toward them. Unfortunately, the Flores were simply too numerous, and the arrows barely slowed them down. The crossbow unit slowly started panicking because they were almost out of arrows already. Some mercenaries desperately wondered when the assault team would finally reach them. Right as panic started spreading, the Flores finally reached the defenders' formation. But before the monsters could break through the line, the assault unit suddenly arrived and sliced straight through them. Ghislain then turned toward the exhausted mercenaries and told them they did well, holding out this long. Gordon and the others looked incredibly relieved seeing their employer arrive in time. They genuinely believed they survived only because Ghislain showed up. Ghislain immediately ordered everybody to widen their formation and surround the Flores from every direction. According to him, it was finally their turn to overwhelm the monsters instead. The mercenaries quickly followed his orders and started surrounding the Flores aggressively. Suddenly, one of the Flores let out a loud scream, signaling the others. The moment that happened, the entire group of monsters started retreating. The mercenaries looked shocked, seeing the creatures suddenly run away. Even Ghislain did not expect the Flores retreating before getting completely surrounded. He quickly realized the monsters were far smarter than expected. Ghislain immediately turned toward Belinda and ordered her to locate the Flores leader. According to him, the leader had a horn growing from its head and was responsible for signaling the retreat. While chasing the fleeing monsters, Kaor asked whether they truly needed pursuing them further. Belinda also suggested retreating because the monsters were already escaping anyway. But Ghislain explained that Flores were creatures that became obsessed with their prey. Even if they escaped tonight, they would continue stalking and harassing the expedition for days afterward. Because of that, Ghislain declared there was absolutely no reason giving the Flores another chance. He explained they needed avoiding a war of attrition at all costs. According to him, the Flores would completely collapse once their leader died. That was why he intended killing every single Flores there tonight. Belinda looked slightly surprised, hearing how decisive her master sounded now. Then she smiled softly, before taking out a rope. She realized Ghislain truly changed a lot compared to before. Belinda immediately took her stance and told Ghislain she understood the assignment. She threw the hooked rope toward a tree branch and used it to pull herself upward smoothly. Once she reached the air, she gained a perfect view of the battlefield below. Belinda quickly spotted the Flores leader among the fleeing monsters and instantly threw her rope toward it. The hook wrapped around the creature and restrained it successfully. Belinda immediately shouted toward Ghislain that she caught the leader. The moment he heard that Ghislain covered his body with mana and charged directly toward the trapped Flores with terrifying speed. He moved so fast he cut down every monster standing in his path almost instantly. Then he drove his sword straight into the leader's chest. The Flores leader desperately struggled to escape, but Ghislain calmly told the monster it was already over. Then he tore the creature apart completely. The moment the leader died, Ghislain loudly announced its death to everyone around him. He immediately ordered the mercenaries to wipe out the remaining Flores completely. The mercenaries charged after the fleeing monsters, while shouting that they would make the Flores regret hunting them through the darkness. Kaor also ordered his mercenaries to attack aggressively, because according to him, they absolutely could not lose to Gillian and his group. As the sun finally rose, Ghislain killed the last remaining Flores. After confirming the battlefield was clear, he praised the mercenaries for their efforts and declared the battle their victory. The exhausted men immediately raised their swords and started cheering loudly. Most of them still could not believe they survived that terrifying fight and actually won. Belinda quickly rushed toward Ghislain and immediately checked whether he was injured anywhere. Gillian also praised his master for leading the battle successfully. Ghislain calmly told both of them they all performed well tonight. Then he ordered Belinda to begin another head count, while Kaor was told gathering his mercenaries immediately. Ghislain explained that he needed Kaor and Gillian helping spread the Flores corpses around the camp. Kaor looked confused hearing that, and asked whether the corpses actually served some purpose. Ghislain explained that the smell from the dead Flores would keep other monsters away from the area. Since Flores sat near the top of the food chain around the forest entrance, most weaker monsters naturally avoided their scent. Gillian casually called Kaor a kid and told him the corpses would make the camp safer. Kaor instantly looked annoyed hearing that, and challenged Gillian to settle their issues immediately if he wanted. Even after surviving an entire night fighting invisible monsters, these two still somehow found energy arguing with each other. It had now officially been 10 days since the expedition entered the Forest of Beasts. With the Flores exterminated, the group successfully removed every major threat along the planned route. The only thing left now was reaching and mining the runestones. Still, Ghislain quietly looked toward the distant mountains and wondered whether the danger was truly over yet. While he remained deep in thought, Belinda returned after finishing the head count. She reported that all 42 Cerberus mercenaries survived, while only 126 contract mercenaries remained alive. In total, they lost 3 people during the battle. Ghislain immediately asked whether none of the Cerberus mercenaries died. Kaor responded with a cocky grin, and reminded Ghislain that he personally led them. Ghislain then asked Belinda whether the 3 missing men belonged to the contract mercenaries. Belinda admitted she could not fully confirm that because the bodies of the missing men were nowhere around the battlefield. Right then, Gordon suddenly noticed something strange, and asked whether anyone saw Manus recently. One mercenary guessed Manus probably died during the fight, while another pointed out they still could not find his body anywhere. The mercenary with the eye patch immediately concluded that Manus most likely ran away. The scene then shifts to Manus alongside the 2 missing mercenaries sprinting through the forest away from the camp. One of the men nervously admitted hearing the intense battle sounds from earlier and believed they definitely would have died if they stayed behind. The other suggested slowing down because they already created enough distance from the battlefield, but Manus immediately turned around and called both men complete fools. He angrily ordered them to pull themselves together and explained they needed escaping the forest while everyone else remained distracted fighting. According to him, this was their best chance leaving alive, so they needed continuing forward without stopping. The moment Manus finished speaking, he suddenly noticed the 2 men completely freezing in place. He immediately walked toward them and asked whether they suddenly became deaf, but the men only trembled in fear. One mercenary slowly pointed upward and nervously told Manus to look behind him. The moment the idiot turned around, he saw something horrifying towering over them. A gigantic snake rested on top of a pile of runestones, while countless bones surrounded the area beneath it. The creature was absurdly huge, and Manus honestly could not even process what he was looking at anymore. Then the massive snake slowly opened its mouth. A moment later, the bodies of Manus and the 2 stupid mercenaries landed among the mountain of bones. The group continued cutting down trees while moving deeper through the forest. At this point, the mercenaries desperately wanted ending the expedition and finally returning home alive. Because of that, everybody worked far harder than before. Even Kaor noticed the difference and admitted he never saw lazy mercenaries working this seriously without somebody constantly screaming orders at them. Gillian casually told Kaor the mercenaries were simply different from him. Kaor instantly decided ignoring that comment was the better choice before another pointless argument started. Instead, he turned toward Ghislain and asked whether he planned dismissing the mercenaries once the mission ended. According to Kaor, it would be a complete waste using men like this only one time. Ghislain calmly pushed down another tree before revealing he actually planned hiring the mercenaries as his personal force later. Normally, mercenary groups possess terrible organization skills and could never properly compete against a trained army during large-scale warfare. But the experience these men gained, surviving the Forest of Beasts, already pushed them beyond normal mercenary standards. Ghislain knew this group would become the perfect foundation for expanding his power later. Right then, the mercenary wearing the head covering approached Kaor and reported they successfully spread the Flores corpses around their path like instructed earlier. Kaor praised the man named Gazelle before turning back toward Ghislain and admitting the corpses worked surprisingly well. Ever since leaving camp, they had not encountered a single monster. They did not even meet one lost creature wandering alone. Despite hearing that, Ghislain still looked quietly toward the forest, feeling something strange bothering him. He honestly hoped it was just unnecessary paranoia. While he remained distracted, Belinda suddenly dropped down from a nearby tree and called out to him. Ghislain immediately asked whether she spotted something ahead. Belinda confirmed that she did. The moment Ghislain heard her report, his expression changed instantly. He immediately turned toward the mercenaries and ordered everybody to clear the path with everything they had left. The men quickly followed his orders and started pushing forward faster than before. As they moved closer toward their destination, a bright light slowly became visible through the trees ahead. Then the group finally stepped out from the forest and saw something unbelievable standing before them. The mercenaries froze completely after seeing the massive runestone mine spread before their eyes. Ghislain looked toward the mine confidently and revealed this was the true reason they started the expedition in the first place. The entire area contained an extremely high-quality runestone vein hidden deep within the forest. A strange fog surrounded the mine, while the glowing runestones illuminated the entire place eerily. Kaor honestly could not believe the forest truly contained something valuable enough justifying this suicidal expedition. Jillian calmly reminded him that Ghislain always acted with proper reason behind his decisions. Meanwhile, Belinda immediately hugged Ghislain and asked how he even discovered the existence of a runestone mine like this. The mercenaries stared toward the glowing stones with disbelief because most people spent their entire lives never seeing a single runestone directly. The men instantly realized they would all become incredibly rich after bringing these back home. But the moment everybody started celebrating, someone suddenly rose from the fog nearby and coldly informed them they were not going anywhere. Ghislain immediately sensed something was wrong. The figure stepping from the fog turned out to be Manus. The mercenaries looked horrified seeing the supposedly missing man standing there. Manus weakly told them everything was already over before suddenly collapsing onto the ground. Gordon and several mercenaries immediately tried rushing toward him, but Ghislain stopped everybody by blocking them with his sword. Then our boy took his stance and unleashed a massive swing that pushed the surrounding fog away completely. The moment the fog cleared, the mercenaries finally saw the horrifying truth hidden around the mine. Bones covered the entire area. Human corpses and monster remains were scattered everywhere in ridiculous amounts. The men stared at the scene in shock while wondering what kind of nightmare happened there. Kaor, Belinda, and Gillian immediately drew their weapons and called out toward Ghislain. Our boy calmly explained they obviously would not mine valuable runestones for free, considering the amount of corpses surrounding the area. Ghislain quickly realized this place was the nest of a high-class monster. Since some bodies still had not fully decomposed, the creature was likely still living nearby. Ghislain admitted he failed, recognizing the danger immediately, because the poisonous gases from the corpses mixed naturally with the surrounding fog. Our boy genuinely disliked the situation because there were no records mentioning dangerous creatures directly inside the mine itself. Then Ghislain suddenly turned around and ordered everybody preparing for battle immediately. The second he said that, something massive suddenly loomed over him. A gigantic red python emerged from above and instantly charged toward the group. Ghislain immediately ordered everybody scattering before rushing toward the monster himself. He jumped above the python's mouth and slashed across its head while passing over it. After landing on the creature's body, he coated his sword with mana and charged directly toward its head again before stabbing deeply into its scales. Unfortunately, the attack barely did any damage at all. Gillian and Kaor looked completely shocked after seeing Ghislain only leave behind a tiny scratch despite using mana. Kaor admitted he never saw scales this durable before in his entire life. The giant snake immediately tried throwing Ghislain away. Our boy jumped from its head just in time, but while still airborne, the python spat poisonous venom directly toward him. Ghislain instantly realized the venom was insanely dangerous, so he quickly used his coat to block the attack. The poison instantly melted the coat apart completely. Before Ghislain could recover properly, the python slammed its massive tail directly toward him. Ghislain planted his sword into the ground, trying to resist the impact, but the monster's strength was overwhelming. The tail smashed him straight into the ground. Belinda immediately screamed out worriedly toward her master. At the same time, the giant snake wrapped its massive body around the mercenaries, attempting crushing the entire group at once. Before the monster could squash them completely, Jillian, Belinda, and Kaor quickly rushed around, saving as many men as possible. While the mercenaries struggled reorganizing themselves, everybody started desperately searching for Ghislain, wondering where he disappeared. Meanwhile, our boy stood silently atop a mountain of bones nearby. Now that he finally saw the monster personally, his earlier uneasy feeling completely disappeared. Ghislain instantly recognized the creature. This monster was the true ruler protecting the runestone mine. It was the blood python. The blood python was one of the monsters Ghislain originally considered impossible hunting during this expedition. He never expected expected encountering it because the creature normally lived much deeper inside the forest. Ghislaine honestly knew their chances defeating this monster were extremely low. The smartest option would be retreating immediately and returning another time fully prepared. But our boy also knew he no longer had time for delays. If he gave up now, everything he accomplished until this point would become meaningless. A bright light shined from his chest and he took a stance. He asked the monster to not get in his way. He said that he has too many things on his back. Ghislaine opened his third core after saying this. The blood python turned to him and charged at him. Our boy managed to block its head and landed a cut on it. Before letting the monster go back up, he landed a cut in its eye. The moment he did this, the blood python used its tail to attack him. Ghislaine quickly used his sword to shield himself from the crushing weight of the monster. He managed to push the tail back. However, the monster did not stop attacking him. It used its tail to aggressively attack our boy. Ghislaine managed to block off the attacks. Even when winning is unlikely, there are battles that one must not avoid. This is the definition of responsibility. Kaor, Belinda and Jillian watched as their master fought for their lives. Ghislaine jumped and landed a cut on the python's mouth. Our boy knew that this was the time for him to fulfill his responsibility. When he landed, he took a deep breath and took a look at the monster. He realized that the blood python was not showing any signs of faltering. This was a problem for him, because unleashing the third core for a long period of time is too risky. Ghislaine realized that his mana will be depleted before he can kill the blood python. The moment he thought of this, the group ran to him. They quickly covered him. Belinda asked him if he is alright. She asked him to escape to safety. She said that they can hold the monster down. Ghislaine asked everyone to leave there. They were all shocked to hear this. Gordon asked him to repeat what he said. Gillian asked his master if he knows what he is saying. Ghislaine told the man that he can't guarantee his safety in a battle against such a massive monster. He told him that he cannot afford to lose him here. Belinda asked her master to tell her what he plans to do. Our boy said that he will defeat the monster here. Belinda knew that her master has shown her amazing things before today, but she did not understand why he was going this far. While they were talking, the blood python fired its venom at them. Ghislaine ordered them to leave quickly. The mercenaries ran. However, they did not run away. They ran to protect their employer with their shields. Our boy was shocked to see this. The men begged him to allow them fight with him. The eye patch man told our boy that they have never met an employer like him. Gordon reminded him that he has saved their lives many times. Kaor told him that the treasure will be theirs once the python is gone. Belinda told her master that it is impossible for her to leave him behind. She took out her knives and a dagger. Jillian told Ghislaine that they will draw the python's attention and create an opening. Our boy was surprised to hear this. With a smile on his face, Jillian asked Ghislaine to trust them since they trusted him. Our boy informed them that the monster is massive and it has a lethal venom. Its extremely sturdy crimson scales will deflect even blades imbued with mana. Ghislaine told them that they will die if they receive even one attack. Belinda was shocked to hear this. He revealed to them that they can inflict some damage if they smash its right eye and gaping injury. Our boy raised his sword. He told the Forest of Beast expedition team that they need to return alive. The men smiled when they heard this. They all accepted his order. The blood python charged at them. Gillian attacked its mouth while Belinda and Kaor attacked it from the side. Kaor stabbed it in its injury. The monster screamed out in pain. While the python was screaming, Gillian slammed his axe on its tail. He pressed it down. Ghislaine used this opportunity to charge at the monster and stab its other eye. Our boy realized that not everything will go his way just because he knows the future. However, if he doesn't take any action, many will die. This is something that he is not going to let happen because he is the only one who knows the future. Gillian and the other mercenaries continued hitting the tail to hold it down. The python screamed out in pain. The mercenaries did not let it rest. They climbed on top of it and continued stabbing it in its injuries. The python shook its head and managed to shake them off. The moment it did this, Ghislaine jumped and charged at it. He was going to stab it on its head. Somehow, the python managed to sense his presence. It opened its mouth and ate our boy. Everyone was shocked to see this. Before the python could even move, a blade came out of its head. Ghislaine used his sword to split the monster's head open. He came out of the python's mouth. His clothes were covered in its venom. The group was shocked to see him. He referred to himself as the future of Peridium.